Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is Michelle, and who's here with me?
It's JD!
It's JD. It's always JD. And it's
Michelle, I
always
got it right this
Michelle. You
time.
did. I'm so proud.
Maybe you should
It's
just start these forever.
forever. Yeah, but
Forever.
I will never let you have any microphone time if I'm in charge. Speaking of being in charge, oh man, I'm so excited for today. You guys, if
Big
you didn't
bonus
see the
episode here,
title,
guys. Big bonus.
oof,
We're doing
oof.
something extra cool here and extra special. I'm super excited about it, too.
JD does not understand how much I broke my brain in October. I mean, we did talk about when I broke my brain in a car accident, but here's what I did.
I have a good idea how much you broke your brain, Michelle.
So here's what seemed like a good idea.
This woman is a crazy person, and I mean that in the most loving way, guys, in
Oh,
the
I know
most
you do.
friendly
Thank
way,
you.
but you need to understand before she even gets started here, this is a crazy person.
Yes, forewarning, this is not what a sane, well-balanced human being would do. We're not going to get into it as much until our October recap, but basically Saw X came out at the beginning of the month. I'm a huge Saw fan, so I had watched Jigsaw in September in preparation because that was the one I had seen the least. I watched Saw X immediately when it came out. And then throughout the next couple weeks, I watched all of the Saw movies. And then my friend Jenna came over and we watched Saw X again, which took forever because we kept pausing it for like an hour to talk.
Uh,
And
I
yes.
don't mean to just briefly.
Oh,
Would
yes.
that be Jenna who never watches the movies before listening to the episodes?
It is the same Jenna. And I guess we were talking only 20 minutes into the movie to the point that we had to pause it. So maybe that's why she only listens to
She's gonna
the
be like, "You didn't even have a new movie for me to watch today."
No, I'm so sorry. This her conversation kind of inspired this episode because oh man, she and I have so many thoughts
For
on the
sure.
Saw franchise. So then she went home, and then a couple days later, I went. I'm gonna watch 6 movies in a row, back to back, no breaks. So Saw 3 through 7, and then Spiral in the span of however many hours that is, 10, 20.
Several.
I have no idea. It felt like a very long time. So now, I mean, before this, I had gone out to hoo ha with some friends and was yelling across the table at my friend about how somehow the original Saw no longer fits in with the rest of the series just while we were at a Mongolian grill. So I am now that person. I have very, very strong opinions about Saw, especially the traps and especially about how it has uh evolved, and I need to talk about it, JD. I need to talk about Jigsaw, aka John Kramer, aka many spoilers ahead. So many spoilers.
Whoa,
If you can figure
spoilers!
that
I was
out.
gonna say,
So
Michelle.
many spoilers.
No,
So many spoilers.
this actually dovetails nicely with an interesting part of my Spooktober experience, which is, I've never actually, I've seen the first, or well, before October this year, I had seen the first Saw film once, and there was one other that I had seen most of, but I didn't know for sure which one it was. And Michelle had started talking about she was excited for Saw X to be coming out and whatnot. And I decided, like my only issue with the first Saw film, I didn't think it was a bad film, but as I've talked about, I think in other episodes, I just happened to, and I'm not usually good at this, so that surprises me about it even more, but I happen to be able to figure out about 20 minutes into the movie what most of the major plot reveals and developments were going to be. And so it didn't really end up working really well for me because the big surprises weren't big surprises. And that was a bummer. It's not the movie's fault, I don't think. I just happened to catch all the little drops at the right time. But the other one I had seen, I wasn't really taken by, and so I had never bothered to see them. But I feel like if I want to be taken even remotely seriously, as I never want to say as a horror critic, but if I want people to feel like my opinion on movies is something worth listening to, I have to have at least a decent amount of of wide awareness of things. And this is a smashingly popular franchise that's really enjoyed by plenty of people whose opinions I respect, like Michelle. And so I decided, as part of my October viewing, I was going to watch all 9 of the currently released Saw films. I was going to try to get to the theater to see Saw X, but my life behind the scenes is fucking nuts right now, and I unfortunately haven't been able to see that yet. As soon as it's not $20 to watch at home and it's more like $6 to watch at home, that's probably what I'm going to do.
Or you
But
could buy
yeah,
it like I did.
I'm sorry, say again?
You could buy it like I did.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
I know.
Especially
You
not
don't
after
want to yell in a
watching.
Mongolian grill?
Well, I'm just saying, especially not after watching all 9 of the other films. I watched all 9 of them over about 3 days, just consecutively. Got them all out of the way.
Speed run next time.
So yeah, that just dovetailed with Michelle's experience, and we thought, as a bonus episode for you guys, we would do kind of a retrospective. We're only going to do those first 7 Saw films. Is that correct, Michelle? The first 7 before we get to Spiral and Jigsaw?
Yes, I do have some thoughts on Spiral and Jigsaw and Saw X, but I don't think they're really spoilery. It's more the movies as a whole. I think the initial 7 are frankly just the most fun to talk about because shit goes wacky, and I think it's going to just be more fun than talking about the 2 kind of, I don't want to say remakes, but like the later, and then they're suddenly like, oh, Saw X, but it's kind of a prequel, but it's kind of a not. So like I think the first 7,
we're gonna talk about things
wild.
like that in relation to this franchise for sure.
Oh yeah, my notes are so fucking all over the place. I am ready. I fucking loved Saw for all the right and the wrong reasons.
So guys, look, that's the spoiler free section. Before we get into the spoiler section, Michelle, you want to give a skull rating on the first 7 Saw movies collectively?
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5 for Michelle.
For different reasons. Some of them, it's because it's so hilariously outrageous.
Wait, are you saying that all 7 of these movies are movies that you would give 5 skulls to?
Yeah.
Individually, you would give all 7 of these movies 5 skulls.
I guess Saw 4 or 5. I think 4 might be like a 4.5 for me, but Nope, never mind. I'm looking at my notes of Saw 4. I get that one mixed up with Saw 5 because of how these movies are. No, all of them are 5. Saw 4 might not make it, but as a collective, all 7, fuck it, 5. 35 skulls. If we were adding on the last 3 would not get 5s. The first 7, 5 skulls. 35 total.
This is going to be a real interesting discussion now.
I love
Saw. As a whole, all 7 of these movies together, I can't, and again, because we're talking about my experience, this is not a judgment of these movies on their inherent nature. The first 7 of these all together is like 2 skulls for me.
Oh, no. No.
Here's what I will say is, even rewatching the first one, now not just knowing the major plot developments, but having seen the entire movie before, I am able to appreciate that one on a different level. I would have given that movie 4 skulls, for sure. That was it's a solid film. It's really well put together. But for reasons we'll talk about when we get into the deep spoilers here, overall, this was it's not a franchise that works for me. I think there are really good effects here. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into designing the carnage and mayhem that we get to see in this. But unfortunately for me, that carnage and mayhem is basically the only part of this that I get any kind of enjoyment out of. There's things about the story that just collapse for me. There's things about the themes and the philosophies of it, the character arcs and everything that fall flat for me. But we'll talk about all of that. Guys, if you don't want spoilers, you want to go watch all of the first 7 Saw movies after you hit that pause button, but don't forget to come back. Go watch all 7 Saw movies
Like I
right
did in
about
a day.
right about now. All right. So,
Oh man.
did they
Oh
come
man.
back? Hey,
Oh.
Michelle.
Oh man. Yeah.
Now that we're back from the spoiler break, you want to do that thing you do so well where you summarize the plot of things for people who maybe didn't go see the movies and
Oh
summarize the
no.
plot of all 7 of the first 7 Saw films?
I wasn't prepared, but sure. Okay, so there's a
No,
man named
that's
John. No, I'm doing it. I'm
Oh,
doing it. You've
God. Oh,
asked. We'll get
God.
into details. Okay, so there's a man named John Kramer, and he is known as Jigsaw, aka the Jigsaw Killer. And John Kramer has cancer, and he is mad about people who do not appreciate their life. And sometimes he says it's because he has cancer and he's going to die, and he wants them to live their best life. But other times he says it's because he was in a car accident. That's when he appreciated his life. He can't make up his mind. That's half the thing I love about Jigsaw. Sometimes a hypocrite, sometimes just a confused man with brain cancer, sometimes just a weird old guy. I just love him. So many different facets. Why does he wear a cloak so much more in the beginning of the movies than he does in the later ones? No one knows. I bet John knows because he is a mastermind, and he's got engineer energy. He likes to just hang out and think of ways to torture and torment people, what he calls rehabilitating them by putting them in various traps. And he is somehow also very, very aware of human behavior and what they are most likely to do. So, man, they thought they were in a trap before. Now they're really in a trap. And now there's another trap outside that trap. And now John is dead. And now he's still building traps. And he has been dead for 3 movies. And we're still following his plan. And now the guy, Robin Hood, AKA the dude from The Princess Bride. Now he's been the surgeon the whole time, and he comes back and he survived the trap. And we were wondering, like, hey, Jigsaw, he's a really good engineer and he's also a really good psychologist. He can't also be a good surgeon. Well, he's not. That's what he has Carrie Elway for. And then Amanda shows up and she's like, hey, I do drugs sometimes. He's like, trap for you. And then she's like, now I'm cutting myself because I'm sad about the trap. He's like, second trap for you. JK, you're my assistant. Want to be in all the movies forever? And Amanda's like, that sure sounds great. Just kidding. I'm kind of in love with you in like a weird daughter, but like weird wife way that I can't quite figure out the energy of. And then Jigsaw's, AKA's John's ex-wife slash girlfriend slash partner. I'm not sure what that relationship is. I'm too busy thinking about Amanda, Bone, and Jigsaw. So the ex is back in the picture, and now Jigsaw, aka John, has died. John has died, which means Jigsaw has died. Just kidding. Jigsaw's still in the picture. And she gets a box, and the box is like, hey, I know I died and that we kind of didn't agree with me like tormenting people, but like, could you maybe help me out and torment some more people? And she's like, hell yeah, bro. But then, oh man, she gets tormented, and now her face is a hole. And then Carrie Elway's like, that's not cool. I'm going to kill this guy in 3D. The end of the first 7 Saw movies. Game over.
Oh, my God. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, that's
I
how I
thought
felt the entire Saw franchise.
I thought I was making a funny joke about summarizing 7 movies worth of plot,
I have so many
especially
thoughts.
these 7 movies. So before we get into thoughts, so that's Michelle running through and if that sounded convoluted and weird and like it only made about 38% sense.
I didn't even talk about Hoffman. I didn't
Right.
mention Hoffman.
So something I want to do here for you, because as I was watching these movies, one of the big things that started to just become my current favorite word in the world, so preposterous about this franchise for me, is their just insistence on tying all of these individual films into one giant story. Like, this becomes so you could tell these exact same 7 movies stories. It could be this famous world's most wanted serial killer Jigsaw, who every couple of years or so pops up in a new place and murders a whole bunch of people in crazy traps and just keeps getting away, and he's always got that you could do that. But the fact that they insist on tying them all to, like, when you really break it down, there are so many sets of traps and things in here that he had to set up layers on top of layers on top of layers
Oh, I
going
got notes.
going across. So here's what I want to do. This is something I've wanted to do. What I got curious. I was like, I wonder, and of course the answer is yes because it's the internet. I said, I wonder if there's some place on the internet where somebody has taken all of the Saw movies and broken them down into an in timeline order of the events that occur across the
Yep.
entire franchise and how they all tie in together. And I
Yes.
found actually several different versions of this with larger and lesser amounts of detail. This one that I'm looking at right now is the most succinct, least detailed of them. And I'm going to give you a few of these notes here. What I'm going to read for you is everything on this timeline that it happens in the movies, but this is just everything that happens before the timeline of the present day events in the 7 movies happens. Everything that I'm about to tell you happens in some kind of flashback alluding to events that happened before any of these 7 movies took place. Are you ready for this? Here we go. Corrupt Detective Eric Matthews plants evidence that leads to the incarceration of several innocent people, including Amanda Young, who becomes a heroin addict while in prison. Detective Mark Hoffman's sister, Angelina Acom, is murdered in a domestic dispute incident by her boyfriend, Seth Baxter, who is given life imprisonment. John Kramer, a successful civil engineer, designs his first building called the Gideon Meatpacking Plant while encouraging his wife Jill Tuck to open the Homeward Bound Clinic, a center to help recovering drug addicts. Following her release, Amanda Young becomes a patient at Homeward Bound. The CEO for Umbrella Health Insurance, William Easton, sponsors a party for the Homeward Bound Clinic where he meets Kramer, who doubts his moral leanings. With a baby on the way who they name Gideon, John and Jill are at long last happy until one of Jill's patients, Cecil Adams, forces his way into the clinic, causing Jill to miscarry. We later learn he was coerced into doing so at the urging of Amanda Young. Sunk into a deep depression, John undergoes an x-ray, but his results are mislabeled by resident Logan Nelson, and his cancer goes undetected. He's later diagnosed by Dr. Gordon with an inoperable stage 4 brain tumor. Kramer learns of an experimental cancer treatment in Norway for his cancer and approaches insurance executive Easton to seek coverage, but Easton refuses to cover the procedure. A devastated Kramer separates from Jill and tries to kill himself in an auto wreck, but survives. Kramer dedicates himself to testing those who are unappreciative of the gift of life. He begins by kidnapping Cecil Adams and using his first trap on him. Cecil survives, but John slices a jigsaw piece of skin from him, leading the cops who discover him to label John the Jigsaw Killer. Kramer's taste for blood leads him to create his first torture game featuring 5 people who escape the clutches of justice, during which he enlists one of its participants, Logan Nelson, to become one of his disciples. The pair build the first reverse bear trap. Enraged, Detective Hoffman murders Seth Baxter but sets it up to appear like a jigsaw-style killing. Kramer uncovers the truth and blackmails Hoffman into carrying out more torture games. Hoffman informs Kramer that Detective Tapp is sniffing around. Kramer encourages Hoffman to frame Lawrence Gordon and hands over the doctor's penlight for Hoffman to place at a crime scene. Amanda is placed into a reverse bear trap by Jigsaw and survives. With a newfound appreciation for life, she then becomes his next apprentice. Dr. Gordon is interviewed by Detective Tapp and Detective Singh after his penlight is discovered by Detective Carey near the body of one of Jigsaw's victims. After Detective Singh is killed during a raid on Jigsaw's warehouse, Tapp spirals into a depression, believing that Dr. Gordon is the killer, so pays photographer Adam Stanheidt to follow him. Kramer and Amanda set up Stanheidt and Gordon's test in an abandoned bathroom, and that all fucking happens before the stories in these movies ever happen.
But significant parts of those are entire plots of the later movies.
But what I'm saying is this is before all the traps start going off. This is before
No.
people start dying.
That's not before the trap started. They even said his first trap was putting the guy in the knife trap.
It's before all but one of the traps, Michelle. Okay, we'll go
There's
that
at least
far.
3 traps you just mentioned. You don't understand how many traps there are. You just mentioned 3 of them. There were traps before this trap. You think Jigsaw showed up and saw one, and this was his first trap? You think he locked two people in an
No,
abandoned bathroom to saw off their ankles while he pretended to be dead in the floor, and that's where he started? No,
no.
this man, we are entering a world where John Kramer has existed for a while.
Right. My point, Michelle, is
Yeah.
all of that, all 35 lines of timeline notes that I just read in the timeline of this film, all of that takes place, and we still have major details from all 7 of those movies that are still going on. What I'm trying to illustrate is how fucking preposterously convoluted this whole thing is.
When you read it out, though, it seemed very logical. I was expecting it to be like, well, he went to Norway and then he went to Florida in the span of 2 hours, things that are actually impossible. No, this guy's just ambitious. Have you ever met an engineer? This is all
Oh,
completely believable.
no, no, it's not.
There's nothing in there that seems off to me. There are things that seem off to me, but we have not gotten into those. John Kramer, not one of the things that seems off. He's predicting the future from the grave for a very, very long time. Completely believable.
Yeah, yeah, sure it
Yeah,
is.
he's just very smart.
Right.
So smart.
You gotta be fucking kidding me right now. Oh, and that was ultimately my point with these movies is the longer I watched them, just the more absurd it became to me that all of this ties together into one giant colossal web. It's to me it's just a bridge too far. Like I said, even if each of these was an independent incident and they didn't all happen to dovetail together with characters from one story, like maybe victims in one thing becoming part of the jigsaw scandal or whatever later. It just reached it's because there are so fucking many of them. Just the sheer volume of the layers and layers upon which this plot has to be constructed just ultimately makes me not care anymore. And it actually happened pretty quickly for me. I would say I was mostly checked out probably about halfway through the third film.
I think that you're jealous. You are jealous that
Yeah,
John Kramer had a movie made post mortem that began in his 50s and had so much happen that they went, we have to tell more of John Kramer's story in a sequel and then a third
right.
movie. And then he accomplished so much.
Right,
I
totally
will never
believable.
do enough to warrant a 10 movie franchise. I'm envious. Then
Totally
again, I
believable.
think he started all of this bullshit well past the age that I'm at now. So there's maybe time. I'm not saying I want to be Jigsaw. I'm saying I want to accomplish as much as John Kramer managed to.
I will tell
That
you
man
this
had
much.
time.
I will tell you this much, Michelle. The
Yeah.
one single most believable element of this entire franchise's story to me is the fact that John Kramer would want to murder the world when he finds out that the only reason the cancer he's got is going to kill him is because some dickhead didn't read a scan properly 2 years ago.
And yet that's the dickhead that he spares throughout all of this.
Right. Look, my point all
No, I know what you're getting at. I have thoughts on the entire Saw 6 movie that I'm looking forward to talking about. But I'm saying, like, that's the one where he was like, it was an honest mistake. I have other people who didn't even
Was
commit
it an
mistakes who
honest
are now
mistake,
dead.
Michelle, or was he just a fucking
No,
idiot who wasn't
he
paying
was just a
attention to
fucking
his
idiot.
job?
Oh, part of what I love about the Saw franchise is that John Kramer, despite being a genius, is also a fucking idiot. I love
Oh,
these
there
movies. He is flawed and yet accomplished so much.
there are two kinds of dangerous people in the world, Michelle. There are two kinds of criminals and dangerous people, and that's bad guys and stupid guys, and they both have to be addressed properly. I've
There are
had my
two kinds of people. There's a John Kramer and a Jigsaw, and both live in you, and one of them is also a wolf.
you have I was gonna say you have two wolves inside of you. One of them is a
One of
cancer
them is
patient.
John
One of them is a
Kramer.
serial killer.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, so all that aside, and look, that's just and that's weird for me because I'm always the guy who's like, I need solid plot, right? But I think that
Give
is
you
why.
so much plot.
Yeah, that's and I think that's the problem is they're ultimately just for my taste. There's I do want to say these are all. I mean, you can't fault James Wan's production. The guy, obviously, first of all, he's got the budget to put things together. He always makes a slick looking movie. I am eager to start talking about some of the traps involved here because, as I said, those are the parts of this movie, like the gore and the traps. And a lot of that. I did enjoy a decent amount of that on a very visceral level. There's some really fucking terrifying stuff in here. There's also some real stupid shit, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure. So on that level, there are definitely parts of this that I was able to appreciate. It's just also when we get to 7, 8, 9, 10 movies, that kind of stuff is ultimately going to wear off. I think I would have been way more accepting of this if it had just been 3 movies instead of 9 that I watched. We're only going to talk about 7 today. But other than that, yeah, that's my general thoughts on it.
You haven't even gotten to enjoy the Saw video game yet, have you?
Michelle, I don't play video games.
No. I'm just saying you really
Look,
got to
Michelle,
immerse
all
yourself.
I'm saying is that in the constructed timeline, all of that shit happens before the first movie ever begins. And this timeline I'm looking at still has 3 times as much, again, of stuff on it as what I read to you. It's fucking preposterous. Like, it reaches
It's
a point.
ambitious.
By the time I'm guessing it was probably number 6, because they always do that at the end of a movie, or they do it a lot at the end in these movies. They don't do so much of a recap at the beginning. You'll get a little bit of one, but they give you that big exposition scene towards the end where all the pieces fall into place. And it reached a point in one of these where they started to go into that scene, and I just fucking laughed out loud. I was just like, this is so goddamn absurd. I don't. This is not a franchise that I actively dislike in any way. It's really just not for me. But yeah, let's talk about some traps, Michelle. I know you took copious notes and have a lot that you want to talk about. Can I start this by asking just one very obvious softball of a question?
Sure.
What's your favorite trap in the franchise?
Oh, that's not a softball question, though, because this is a thing that turned into a half-hour discussion
Really?
with Jenna. Yes.
I guess I assumed, like, don't get me wrong, I think there's going to be, I guess my thought was there's going to be a lot of stuff here that Michelle really loves, and there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. But I guess I kind of assumed that you might also be the person who has definitely spent enough time with it that you had nailed down for sure what your single favorite trap was. So maybe I was wrong.
No, my thing is, I have to decide how to define favorite. Because, like, one of them is so gruesome that I have never been able to fully watch it. I have looked away
really?
every time. But
Okay.
that's not my favorite. There's another one that is, like, the game throughout the entire movie is, like, my favorite concept. So there's that. Like, I don't know what to define favorite as. Like,
Okay.
the thing that it contributes to a thing that I love.
Well,
But I don't have, like, one that I just, like, oh, man.
let's hit both of those, or in any way that
Okay.
you want to do them. Let's talk about, I think that's a great place to start for this, because everybody
Ooh.
who has seen it knows that these are gruesome fucking movies. Everybody who
Oh,
follows
yeah.
our podcast also knows that you and I, and in fact you more than I, have seen some incredibly fucked up things. So what is the trap in this that is so fucking severe that after all this time you have not been able to finish watching it, or to actually
It
watch
is
the whole thing?
Yes, it is an easy answer, and it is one of the ones I have seen the most. I have never been able to stare unblinking through this scene. I have always had at least, like, I've tried. I've had at least a moment where I'm like, oh, and I've gotten close. But Saw 3, The Rack.
Okay.
Timothy Young killed Jeff's son, and now Jeff, on his way throughout this redemption story that is the main game throughout Saw 3, gets to confront Timothy, who is on a rack with his limbs and his head attached to this device, with each limb slowly being rotated to the point where it is completely broken, ending with his head twisting all the way around. It is it is intense. And
It's
oh
it's real
man, it is
crunchy.
without a doubt. Yep, without a doubt, that is the one that it's the only one that I cannot fully watch. It is
Definite,
too much.
definitely high on my list. It reminded me a lot when I did see it, because again, guys, keep in mind, for most of this is the first time I've seen any of this. Is just within the last couple of weeks. The thing I immediately thought about when I saw that sequence was the elevator scene from Evil Dead Rise earlier this year. Totally different
Hmm.
in the specifics, but that very much just that body wrenching, contorting, cracking, it's fucking brutal on a visceral level, and is very high up in a movie that is full of brutal fucking things. Um, for
What
me,
would
and
your number one be then, if
for
not that?
me, and I can't even explain entirely why. But I think this might also be part of why ultimately the longer the series went, it didn't quite keep working for me. To this day, Michelle, I'm not gonna lie to you, that fucking reverse bear trap concept scares the fuck out of me.
And they
Like,
bring it back three
yeah,
times.
and it's there's variations on it every time. Like I can remember with great detail the visceral, horrified experience I had, the response I had the very first time I saw and understood that concept. There's something about that thing just snapping open and ripping your face apart. And then eventually, because obviously they probably didn't have the budget to do it well enough to get away with it in the first film, but eventually we see it in full blown action, and it's
In 3D.
well, I didn't see it in 3D because I watched it at home. But god
You missed out.
damn it! And yeah, just and don't get me wrong. There's stuff that comes later on. There's definitely insane stuff going on here, but that first reverse bear, because that's the first trap you see in the entire franchise. Even if you go back to like we did earlier in October and get the Saw 0.5, that's the original Saw trap, is that reverse bear trap. And that was so viscerally effective for me right out of the fucking gate that I never had that same experience going for it. Set the bar, I think. And I think there's stuff they did that's definitely more gruesome and more severe, but that was such an impact right up front, and that fucking gets me where I live. And then on top of that, you put the challenge that he makes with it is I'm either gonna rip your head in half or you're gonna murder this person to get the key to turn this thing off. I fuck man. It was so much, so intense.
Well, since you're mentioning a trap from the first one, should we just talk about the first movie?
Yes, absolutely. So, guys, I think you probably
Oh,
figured out along the way, if you've been listening for a while, that Michelle is much, much better at organizational things than I am.
I have so many
Uh,
pages.
I'm very much like, I'm the guy who's always like, oh, yeah, and another thing that I almost forgot to talk about. So, Michelle's going to kind of take the lead here. We're going to go through talking about a bunch of these traps, and I'm basically going to let her talk about them. And when I have stupid little things to say, I will chime in.
Awesome.
Michelle
A
gonna
couple
teach a
notes.
fucking college class on the Saw franchise. Get your
Oh my
fucking
God.
notebooks out.
I have so many pages. I have so many things bookmarked. I have so many things I'm still going to go watch and read about after. We've talked about this, especially in recent Spooktober episodes, how I just like a movie that keeps me engaged well after the fact. And I think that's why I love the Saw franchise so much. I know that there are tons of plot holes, but I also don't think at this point in the series that they are making something seriously.
Sure, and I want to point out, Michelle, because you used the phrase
Hmm.
plot holes there specifically. I want to be clear. I actually don't think there are plot holes here. Something you said when I was reading through those timeline points, I definitely agree with. uh, and you have to credit the writers on this, is within the context of this story, everything does make sense. Like the way they actually
Sometimes.
pulled off making all of this layering at least make sense with it. Again, it's just the overall scope of it all and the volume. It just eventually reached such an absurd point to me. But I do want to give them credit for that, because as I read through that timeline the first time I saw it, I was like, this is still fucking preposterous, but it's wild that none of this, like, there are all, I can't think of a single plot hole that I would point out in this whole thing.
There is there are a couple, but they are caused by Saw X.
Sure. And so, yeah,
Yep.
shout out to the people who make these movies. They do a hell of a job making all of this stuff work for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's absurd. I agree. The first seven, it's so ridiculous, but like it does, I don't want to say make sense, but it does work. Saw X, I think, kind of tore apart some of that earlier stuff. But I don't want to get into Saw X. And frankly, there's a lot of people who can say,
Well,
like,
that's
well,
fine
he
by
had
me
this
because I still
knowledge.
haven't seen it.
Exactly. And he had this knowledge by Saw 3, so then this doesn't make sense because he would have to know this person. So there are some of those a little bit more with Saw X, but fuck it. We're 13 years after Saw 7 and we're finally getting like a true Jigsaw movie again. They can make some mistakes. He's been dead a long time, okay?
Or for
Okay.
that matter, I think you can say, look, it's been 13 years since the first 7, and we've had 2 sort of standalone things in between here that are of, questionable quality, depending on who you are. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are just like for me, Saw is Saw 1 through 7, and I'll always have those. And what they've done since, I don't care for, but it's so far removed that whatever.
Exactly. Fuck it. That's my thoughts on it. Okay, so if you are like me or like John Kramer, you probably have a lot of detailed thoughts on your own. So when I say that I have a list summarizing the traps, I need you to know that I thought this was going to be very quick to just go
Several
through and
pages she wrote, you guys.
several pages. And here's the thing, I thought it was going to be really easy. Like, oh, we're going to record at 10. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to go just find a list of the traps and I'll have my notes of like, oh, yeah, that was this to remind myself. And it would be good. No, no, I very frenzied wrote several pages in an hour to get through this. And I also reached a point where I decided to omit things where the game is just coercion. Like Zep from the first movie being told to kidnap Dr. Gordon's family and he'll get an antidote. Like, that's not exciting. Like, it's just, hey, could you be coerced? Maybe. What's on the line? Like, that's not super fun to talk about. I also just omitted booby traps because a lot of my thinking when I was making my list of traps would be being able to discuss, like, breaking it down a little bit and like, could you survive this? Is this fun? How the fuck would this even happen? Kind of thing. And a guy tripping a wire and getting shotgun to death, that's not a game he's gonna win. But a lot of Wikipedia pages include that on the game list, and I'm not. So, oh, are you talking, JD? Because I cannot hear you if you are.
Yeah, I turned my microphone off. I'm sorry. And
No, that's
that's
okay.
even part of the plot, isn't it? Because isn't that part of that whole plot element where Amanda eventually has to go because she's making unwinnable games?
Yep, that too, which I did include hers in here because I thought the concept would still be fun to
Right.
talk
Yeah.
about.
She's
But I
she's
do have
still
a section.
claiming
Yeah.
she's still setting them up, intending them to be traps or games. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're still unwinnable for
So
sure.
yeah, I took some liberties with this. I did try to include a little bit of a breakdown of who the victims are and why, but some of these people make no fucking sense why they're in these traps. So I just made notes in a frenzied manner. They're clearly way more detailed at the beginning and then at the end. I'm like, I don't even know who this guy is and why he's here. And that's kind of the point. So Saw one. Overall, the bathroom trap is the game of it. And that is where Dr. Lawrence Gordon, aka Harry Elway, aka Robin Hood, Men in Tights,
The
tights, tights.
Dread Pirate Roberts.
But more importantly, the man in tights, 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 and Adam are chained by their ankles in an old bathroom. And Dr. Gordon's whole thing is that he has to kill Adam by 6. Adam's whole thing is, hey, don't die. And that's the game. That's the entirety of the game. Mostly throughout this movie, you are just this is kind of like the most true crimiest of them, or like the escape room, or like the mystery, despite it feeling even more gruesome than the later ones, because I feel like the longer they went in the series, the less they tried to stick to reality so that they could be so absurd without getting like an NC-17 slapdown. It feels like things got so much less believable as the traps became absurd.
And that's actually something that I want to jump on just quickly while you've mentioned it.
Hmm.
That is actually something about the franchise that I wasn't expecting. Is how much like this is almost like it's only horror because of the graphic, violent, gory extent to which the traps go, right? If it wasn't that extreme, this would very much fall into what I think people would call a crime thriller. Like this,
Absolutely.
it's I wasn't prepared for that, and that was an interesting element of it. It's very much like there's very much it's cop drama stuff. They're trying to there's those whatever those movies were where Morgan Freeman is that detective. He did the one with Ashley Judd and a couple others. Or
Seven?
no, this was
Seven?
it's based on some books. I don't. He was
Oh, okay.
a detective, but no. Also interesting that you mentioned Seven, because I definitely in a lot again. A lot of this felt to me like, oh, there's really sort of like an early David Fincher vibe here, like The Game and Seven, and
Hmm.
Panic Room and those early David Fincher films. But again, with just that Eli Roth level torture porn, violence, and gore in the murder segments. And that was a surprise to me. I don't know that it had any effect either way on my enjoyment of it. I just wasn't expecting that. I thought that was interesting.
That's actually why I like it. This is
Well,
way above things like
it ultimately leads
what?
to a lot of the reasons why I don't like it.
Yeah, of
So
course. But like things like Hostel don't appeal to me because it is literally just torture. There
right, yeah,
isn't the story is them like trying to get out of wherever they're in. There's no twist, there's no nothing. I like the traps are so fun to talk about, but they're
oh yeah,
very short, and it's like the atmosphere is gross that they're in. So you feel like this is so much gorier than it actually is. The traps are like small pieces
yeah.
of this
Like
much bigger, dirtier picture.
you sit me down and say, "Hey, I've got two movies. I got Hostel and I got Saw. Which one do you want to watch?" I'm absolutely picking Saw every time. I don't even care which one it is. I will because those Hostel movies just I'm with you on that. That is just again just violence for there's nothing else there, and it's not even that I dislike it. It's just after about 5 or 10 minutes, I need something else.
I rewatched Hostel for the first time, I think like
Why
last
would you
year,
do that to
and
yourself?
because I hadn't seen it since it came out. So I was like preteen, teenage. And my number one comment about Hostel is one, it's not as bad as I remember. And I think that's just because that was like one of the goriest things I'd seen in my entire life at that point.
And I was gonna
And
say,
it's
but I think probably a big part of that is what all have you seen in the interim?
exactly.
Shit
Yeah,
has
things have
gone
gotten
places.
a lot of those things happen without like the camera directly showing it too, so it's implied like this guy's
Right.
getting drilled into. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually wasn't as bad as I remembered it. I still didn't love it, but my other thing is like, oh man, what a time capsule of the early 2000s. Those jeans were so low rise and that hair was so spiky, and the way that they all wore t-shirts over long sleeve shirts. Oh
Yeah, I
man,
still
so
do
many
that.
of them look like my high school boyfriends. And I was like, oh no, the early 2000s did have a culture. And that was my biggest thing was like, oh, this isn't as gory as I remember. I still don't like it. Still like not a thing I want to watch. But also like, oh man, look at how low rise those are. Please don't bring that back. Please keep the 90s around. I wanna wear a hoodie around my waist. I do not want to have my vagina falling out wherever I'm walking. Okay. Not
Oh.
fashion wise anyway, maybe
Uh,
just like for fun. Anyway, okay, so
traps.
traps. Traps.
I knew this was going to be
Okay.
a good episode.
Oh
This
yeah,
is
I
awesome.
told you this is going to be
Yeah.
our longest episode by far. We're at 45 minutes in, and
And
we
we're just
haven't
getting we're
even
just we were
started.
we were gonna start talking about the traps 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
No,
And
this
this
is
is
awesome.
also why I
This
told
is
you
good
we're
stuff.
just doing the first 10 because it's or the first 7 out of 10 because it's a lot already. Okay. So, the razor wire maze, Paul Lee was trying to kill himself by cutting his wrist. So then Jigsaw told him he had to cut himself a lot in order to survive. And he put him in a room and he covered the room in barbed wire and said, "Get to that door within 2 hours or else it will be locked forever." And Paul had to climb through the barbed wire, which he ultimately did not do. JD, do you think you could do it?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't even begin trying to crawl through that shit. I would sit there dog shit terrified, unable to do anything until time ran out and I died. But this one, again, just immediately, this idea of being slowly sliced to death. I've seen variations of this in a variety of different things, but it's one of my biggest visceral pain fears. This is a good one, and it's most closely like the first thing this made me think right away is the pit of razor wire scene in Dario Argento's original 1977 Suspiria. Have you seen that? I don't remember.
Yep. I
Yeah,
know exactly the scene you're
yeah.
talking
So
about.
there's
I
that.
love
This also
Suspiria.
though also reminds me again just because of that concept of hundreds of tiny little cuts just over and over, and some of them eventually getting worse as you get more tangled. It reminds me also of the scene in The Cleansing Hour, which was a Shudder either exclusive or original from a couple of
Hmm.
years back, where this guy is hallucinating and sorry, spoiler alert for Cleansing Hour, but it's out of context. I don't even have to say what it is. Michelle knows what it is.
Oh, yeah.
But
I know
yeah,
exactly what
so
you're
I'll
talking
just
about.
not even say it. It reminds me of that. Reminds me of a movie called Cast a Deadly Spell that has a scene where a guy gets chopped to death by a whirlwind of newspaper. It's just like slow paper cutting him to death. Just Man, I don't know why I gave away the one about the cleansing hour, or wouldn't give away the cleansing hour, and then I mentioned the
No,
one
I
about Cast a
think
Deadly
you're
Spell.
fine.
But
Because they are not, if you haven't seen The Cleansing Hour and you're like, fuck, I was going to watch that tonight right after listening to this 2 hour episode about Saw, they'll forget. You'll forget.
but
Don't worry. You'll be surprised
yeah,
by it. I'm
it's so
in a
intense.
completely different camp from you.
Okay.
Where this one is, I'm not saying that I think I could escape and survive, but that out of a lot of the traps, this is the one that like if I had to be put in one, this would probably be top of my list. Not like
Oh
top, but like
wow.
this would be like cuz I would either attempt it and fail and then just die slowly, and that's fine. I'd have the hope that like maybe somebody would come find me. Or I would like very slowly work my way through it and happen to get out within 2 hours. Those are my
Well,
options. I would not throw myself into that barbed wire. So those
that's
are my two things. I will very carefully do it. If I can't, I'll sit there. I'll wait to
th-
die.
that's interesting because slow death is actually the only thing that I find merciful about the reverse bear trap. Is as savage and violent and brutal and fucked up as it is a rather quick death. Well, except for that one guy, as long as we're in spoilers on the Saw franchise, who just somehow got his face half ripped off and didn't die. I don't know how that works.
Dr. Hoffman or
But
Detective Hoffman. I'm so sorry. He does not
so
have a PhD.
so fucking weird. But
Um, but here's
the
the thing about
slow
the
death
reverse
for me.
bear trap. Hang on, hang on.
Yeah.
Reverse bear trap. You say it's going to kill you immediately. I think your brain's awake for a little too long after that goes off. That is not an instant brain death. That
Okay.
is your brain processing as you're suddenly staring down at the floor because your head is facing the wrong direction. I think your brain is active for way too
That's
long
fair.
after that thing goes
That's
off.
fair.
You might not feel it. I'm not saying that you're processing pain, but you're definitely processing like, huh, okay, I am dead
I'm
now.
I'm
Okay, I
slow.
guess I'm just,
Guess
oh,
I'm
my
just gonna
body's on the
die.
floor. Yep. No,
Uh,
I think there is way too much awakeness after
the
that happens.
the one other thing that this reminds me of before I allow you to move on, Michelle, is actually something that I'm gonna find a link to and send to you. So everybody knows we sponsor Time Bomb Pro Wrestling, which is a local independent professional wrestling promotion here in Fargo, and they occasionally do some hardcore deathmatch type wrestling. You've seen you were there the day they did the match where they took the ropes off the ring and wrapped it in barbed wire, were you not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I knew when we talked about the razor wire maze that you were going to mention Time Bomb Pro, and I completely forgot to even make a footnote about it.
So what and that style of a match where they take the ropes off and just wrap the ring in barbed wire, that's a thing that's been going on for a while in hardcore and deathmatch wrestling. The first time I ever saw it done was in 1988. On the Jim Crockett Promotions Clash of the Champions 1. There's a 6-man tag team match. It was Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors against the 3 Russian dudes. I remember too much about that show. But also, so the reason I mention it is because this one match in particular is also part of the reason why this whole thing fucking terrifies me. There's a legendary no-rope barbed wire match from major independent promotion ECW from the 1995 between Terry Funk and Sabu, where shit gets so out of hand. At one point, Sabu does a weird jump thing, and the barbed wire rips like a 10-inch gash in the side of his bicep. He has to wrap his arm in athletic tape to be able to finish the match instead of quitting and going to the get stitches right away. By the end of the match, Terry Funk and Sabu are so fucking tangled in real fucking barbed wire that they gotta bring all these wire clippers and slowly clip them out. There were nubs on the barbed wire like digging into their necks, and they had to be careful how they moved. I think once you see this thing, this trap might scare you a little bit more.
If there is a person in the trap with me trying to throw me into the barbed wire, yeah, that's way scarier.
I just mean the visceral experience of what it looks like to be chewed up by barbed wire.
Oh, I imagine that being chewed up by barbed wire is awful. That's why I would very slowly attempt to work my way through it. If it did not work, I would just hang out and wait for either death or rescue.
Fair enough. So moving on. Next trap.
This one is fine. Okay, flammable jelly. Mark Wilson faked being sick, allegedly. I have comments on that. And then he was given poison and told that he was covered in flammable jelly. He had a candle and was told to find the combination to the safe in front of him in order to get the antidote out. And then the floor was also covered in glass because why the fuck not? You know, it seemed too easy to have a bunch of random numbers written all over the room and to be able to find it. Yeah, that was so likely to happen. So he's just like, fuck it, glass on the floor too. And then unfortunately, Mark Wilson burned alive because he was holding on to the candle for dear life. And at a certain point, I would definitely give up using the candle and I would just sit in front of the safe and just keep trying things. But also, Mark Wilson faked being sick. He says, if you're so sick, then why do I have so many photos of you up and about? John Kramer is not familiar with invisible disabilities, and that's ableist. And it's bullshit. And I know this movie came out in 2004 when we were a lot more ignorant to things like that, but people can walk around and be sick, okay? John Kramer, man with brain cancer, building all of these fucking traps. Is someone going to turn you into an insurance company? Like, oh, if you're so sick, then why are you murdering these people with reverse bear traps stuck on their faces? And John's going to be like, no, I have a brain scan. He's like, yeah, well, tell that to Mark Wilson. You didn't even understand.
Yeah, that's another thing that's preposterous about this. This is one dude with one, maybe two assistants at a time building and orchestrating all of it. This is like a 10-man job minimum.
I bet Saw 11 is going to introduce us to all the other.
It'll be called Saw 11, and it'll be like a Saw movie.
11
but
jigsaws.
No, it'll be like Ocean's 11, but with saw traps.
My God!
We'll get George Clooney and Brad Pitt and Matt Damon involved.
Do you know how happy that would make
you? Imagine George Clooney in a reverse bear trap.
Oh,
That'd
no!
Be great. That'd be great.
Oh no! Do you have any comments on flammable jelly
No, just
combination
I
man
mean
who's allegedly not sick?
the very standard. First of all, Jigsaw. That's kind of fucked up, man. All of this, I've actually I've heard people say that they're like, no, I think the movie actually it gives you some really interesting things to think about, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? It gives you interesting things to think about. This guy, you mean there's nothing about Jigsaw's position that is understandable or forgivable in any way except that thing about the guy fucking up his cancer scan. This is but yeah, other than that, just definitely, I mean, that's another big fear of mine, is being fucking burned alive. That seems like it would be fucking terrible. Like one of the most excruciating, awful ways to die. So yeah, but other than that, no, I didn't think there was anything super unique or noteworthy about that one.
One of the things I like so much about the Saw movie is how rudimentary these things are.
Some of them,
Like,
yeah.
this is a thing, this one in particular, you could do this. I'm not saying do it. I'm
Right.
definitely, we here at We Watch
This
Shudder
is a
do
trap.
not support you kidnapping a man and
Right.
putting him in a room covered in flammable jelly and giving him a poison.
And that's another thing about this first movie that I think makes it so much more digestible than the franchise as a whole is everything that happens in this movie does feasibly seem like something that one dude and his accomplice could orchestrate and pull off.
There is an asterisk on my statement because I like how rudimentary it seems, but then fucking Jigsaw, the movie Jigsaw, takes place before this one.
Yes.
He had already built a laser collar by this point. We'll come back to. Oh no, we won't, because we're not covering Jigsaw. But I like how simple these are and how it seemed believable when I watched it. And now I'm like, you put a man in a motorcycle blender and cut him into small pieces before this.
And I like I said, I know we're not going to dig into those movies, but I will definitely say that as much as these first 7 weren't necessarily my vibe, I do think there's a significant drop off in those later films. I wouldn't be upset about watching one of these movies again if I'm just browsing through channels at some point, which is rarely going to happen because I don't watch regular TV anymore unless I'm somewhere where I have to. But I guess what I'm saying is, if this was my only option, I'm not gonna turn the TV off, right? I'm gonna watch it. But those most like Spiral and Jigsaw are things that I hope I never have to sit through again.
Oh shit! At the end, we have to talk about that because I disagree.
Okay.
The drill chair is the last trap we're going to talk about from the first one. And oh my god, this guy's name is Jeff. I don't know who the fuck he is, but the detectives go to find Jigsaw, and instead they find Jeff with drills going towards his head. And Drill's tape basically says, like, or Jeff's tape says, you're part of a bigger thing. And then Jigsaw's like, hey man, you have to save him or get me. Those are your options. And like, this is Jeff's game. But Jeff has no control over this.
No,
and then the only way that he is freed is that Dr. Singh shoots one of the drills to stop him instead because he's like, this is impossible. And then Dr. Singh gets fucking shotgunned to death. But like, what was even the point? Why was Jeff there? I have questions about Jeff. This is not a game I could survive. That one I know with a lot of certainty because I have zero control. I'm sitting there under a blanket. Is it nighttime? Is it time to go to sleep? Am I a bird? Is this what you're hoping I'll just nap until they show up? And then they like lift off the blanket and I'm like, oh, thank God you're here to save me. But I can't tell you that because my mouth is duct taped or whatever they did. I can't even talk to these people. And then they're like, don't tell John we're here. And they put the cape back over my head. Fuck that. I don't like this game. No. I don't like ones where I have no control. I'm just waiting for drills to come towards my face. That's like dentist chair level shit.
Yeah.
That's what this is. It's a dentist chair, but with straps and duct tape.
Yeah, and
like it.
Weirdly, I do appreciate that element where they because I was definitely in a headspace of like, well, some of these Amanda traps are not even things that you could win, and I agree with you. The ones where there is less and less agency involved, they're not necessarily ones that scare me more. But they're ones that don't really interest me. I think there's at least a psychological interest in the ones where you genuinely can win. And I think within that sphere, there's a scale of which ones are worse than others. But yeah, I don't think they scare me as much, but I appreciate those situations less.
I think that they kind of, as the series progresses, we learn a lot more about John Kramer,
Mm-hmm.
the man with brain cancer, and he's a little more separated from Jigsaw. Like they try to make you feel a little bit of sympathy for this guy who is straight up menacing in the first
Yeah.
movie. There is no sympathy. This guy is an evil genius
Right.
and we're terrified of him. And then they start going like, no, John's kind of a sympathetic character. His partner miscarried and he's dying of cancer
Yeah.
and he almost died in a car accident. And so they're trying to do that. And I also think that as they do that, they add more traps that have less agency and less winnability. And I think it was their attempt to still make like, no, this guy's a bad guy. Like, we're showing you his mentality, but like, don't think he's a good guy. You
Right.
guys, like, we're not on the side of him. But then they made Saw 6 where he kills a lot of insurance agents and everybody's like, fuck, he's a hero. So like they kind of undid it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Okay.
again I agree with that. Like I said, I think the first film is a good film. It's you know, you're right. The bad guy is just a bad guy. He's like, yeah, okay, he has cancer and it's because this thing happened. But you're right. It's like the dude made a mistake and you're going on a murderous rampage because one dude made a mistake. Like I understand the emotional experience of wanting to do that, of being that angry, but there's a fundamental difference between having that thought and doing that deed. And so that's again, I think the first one is as a single cell is a really solid piece of storytelling.
Solid piece of salt.
Hey
Okay.
Michelle,
There.
before
Oh no.
you said
Yeah.
that was the last trap we were going to talk about for the first movie, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Hey, before we move on, and it'll be nothing for these people because I'm a master editor, my dog is flipping out and he needs to go potty. Can we take a short break and then come back and finish this?
Yes, but if you see somebody wearing a pig mask, get away from them because it's definitely Amanda or Dr. Hoffman or John Kramer or the guy from the later movies.
They
So
do
don't do
like some
that.
pig masks in this
Yeah. So like if
franchise.
you see that, like just get away. Otherwise, because I don't want to be like the person who gets a phone call and you're like, fuck, I'm in a trap. And I'm like, not again. Okay, what's around you? Is there an X on the toilet? You should probably check the tank. Is there a saw? You know what you gotta
So what you're
do.
saying is
Okay.
take my cell phone with me.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
All
Cell
right.
phones would save all of this. That's why they stopped making them in 2010 originally, because they're like, fuck, phones. Okay, yeah,
All
you
right,
go
for
take
all of you
your dog
listening at home,
potty.
we'll be back in a fraction of a second. Okay, so we took the dog out. I almost said I took the bog out. That would be weird. He's not a bog, he's a dog. But we took the dog to the bog. He did his potty, and we're back. Michelle, before we move on here, we were talking about how you know things about dogs. This fucking
Yeah.
dog. Does your dog, first of all, does your dog eat the wet food or the dry food?
Mostly dry, but she's very particular about how she does it.
Okay, so Riley eats the wet food, but he finishes eating the food, and then he licks the bowl, because, I mean, yeah, of course you do. But then, after he's at least visibly removed every visible amount of the food, he just keeps licking it and licking it like there's still food there, as if he has to remove every molecule of processed beef scent from this fucking green plastic bowl. He sat here after he told me he had to go potty for 3 minutes licking that bowl. My dog is weird, is my point.
Well, has your dog wronged a man with brain cancer recently and potentially been coerced into pretending that there is food when there is no longer food in the bowl? Is this your trap that you are
I
being
mean,
tricked into?
I mean,
What did Riley do?
I'd
Just
like
tell
to,
us what he did to John Kramer.
I'd like to say the answer to that is no, but unfortunately, I am not with this dog 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all the time. He spends plenty of time outside of my presence. I don't know what he's getting up to in his personal dealings.
I did run into him at the bar the other day when you weren't around, and I thought
That
that was
sounds
weird.
right.
But he's at least 3, so I mean that makes him legal drinking age in
Michelle,
our state.
I went to Costco today and I got a 1 pound tub of crumbled blue cheese. So I'm gonna munch on a little bit of that while you take us through some traps and Saw 2.
Okay, that sounds great. If there's a trap where you just have to eat a lot of blue cheese, you're surviving. I got faith in you
Jigsaw's
in that one.
fucked, man.
Jigsaw's
Any
so
of Jigsaw's traps involve cheese, he's fucked. That's why none of them involved cheese. Did you notice that? And it's actually a
yeah.
pretty smart technique. If he had put cheese in any of these traps,
not a
his
lot of
game was
cheese
over.
and
If,
no
if he had
genital
eaten more
mutilation,
cheese, he probably
which
wouldn't
like
have
good for
gotten brain
them.
cancer.
Oh, we had completely different thoughts at the same
Guys, it should be noted right away that I'm not a doctor.
I am, and I say that these movies needed more genital mutilation. Okay.
Do you also say
Saw
that cheese
2.
doesn't prevent brain cancer?
It might.
Do you know for sure it doesn't, Michelle? Do you know for sure? Anyway,
We watch Shudder. Do not endorse any medical advice
this
provided
episode
by
is already
co-hosts.
over an hour long, and we've only gotten through traps of 1 of 7
Oh my
movies.
God.
Tear it
Don't
up,
worry,
Michelle.
they're gonna get crazy. Okay, so Saw 2, The Death Mask. Michael Marks. His real crime is having the most generic name of all time. His second crime, I don't remember what it was, but I do know that he was told that there was a key placed behind his eye, and he had to cut his eye open and pull out the key, and then unlock this trap within 60 seconds. And if not, this mask was gonna snap shut and stab him in the face with a bunch of nails. Michael Marks' trap.
It's the reverse bear trap.
Yeah. There's no bears involved.
Right. This one,
unfortunately.
Obviously similar to the reverse bear trap, but lesser in a couple of ways. First of all, for some reason, the fact that it's closing around his head and not ripping his head open is a little less visceral for me. Also, the scenario, obviously both of them horrifying, but if I have to choose between a scenario where to get out of it, I have to cut a hole under my own eye on my face, or I have to murder another person and dig the key out of their guts. And in fact, not even worse, he told me the guy was dead and I didn't realize he was still alive until I got over there and had to stab him. So ultimately, I thought it was a lesser experience compared to that original reverse bear trap.
Lesser in the way that it's as a viewer, or less horrific
both the visceral effect that I experienced just from the concept of the trap, and also the ideological differences between are you willing to harm yourself a little bit to not be harmed a lot, versus are you willing to kill somebody to save your life? That
Wait,
to me,
and which of those?
The one from Saw,
the
one from Saw, the original reverse bear trap, is more intense both ways to me.
I would find it so much easier to kill another person who is paralyzed.
Really?
Yeah. Instead of getting reverse bear trapped, as opposed to cutting into my own eyeball to grab a key and trying to grab that out of my own skull.
Oh, I think you're right. I think to a certain extent, the actual physical act of killing somebody else is gonna be easier. I mean, as like a moral predicament, as a philosophical
I also meant as a moral
concept. I feel like the idea of will you murder this other person to save your own life is philosophically and thematically more interesting than will you cut your face open to save your own life.
Interesting. I just rewatched Would You Rather from 7 years ago or whatever.
I didn't actually rewatch it, but one of the night that I finished this franchise, I started watching it.
That's
and
funny.
I'd already been up super late, and I fell asleep about 20 minutes in, and I had so much other shit to watch during the month that I never got back around to it. But I had that immediate thought Absolutely. If
Yep.
you guys haven't
Where I'm
seen
like,
Would
would
You
you
Rather,
rather?
strongly recommend you check that one out. Similar
Oof.
themes and ideas here, but definitely its own thing.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you gave me another person's eye and I had to cut into theirs or my own, it's their eye. They're gonna deal with it. I'm kidding. I please don't put me in a trap and make me actually. I just like to talk a lot of shit. Okay, please do not put me in a trap. I'm a
I do
soft
agree with
person.
you though. The actual execution of it, I think it would be far easier to cut somebody else's belly open, whether they're alive or not, than to cut a hole in your own face. Absolutely.
I think morally it would be easier for me to sleep at night knowing I killed another man and I didn't have any physical ailments because I would be able to sleep at night instead of sleeping forever because I would be dead. There would be no way that would survive.
You know who's not guilty anymore about anything, Michelle? Dead folks.
That's true.
Dead
Damn,
folks
can't
don't
wait to
feel
be dead.
guilt.
All my crimes are going down with me.
There's
Okay,
a whole world full of
overall
people who
game.
disagree with that philosophy that dead people don't feel guilt.
The Catholic Church?
Oh yeah, and several other
Oh,
religions for that matter.
oh, okay. I know how you feel about religion. We
I
don't have
don't
to get into it on
I don't
this.
I don't
My
feel about
religion
it the
is
way I did
Saw.
10 years ago. Anyway, we're talking
My
about
my
Saw,
Jesus
Michelle.
is John Kramer. He died for our sins and then
I
he kept
Jesus.
committing more of them.
Look,
Okay.
I'm not going to
So,
lie. You saying my Jesus is John Kramer might be more blasphemous than me just saying dead people don't feel guilt. Let's get
I
away
have
from
John
this,
Kramer
Michelle.
prayer
This is going to
candles.
be a 3 a
The
damn
nerve
hour episode if we don't
I'm
keep. Let's go.
trying.
Let's
You
go.
asked me a whole thing about your dog. The Nerve Gas House is the overall game of Saw 2,
The
and Saw 2
nerve
is
of
my
this
favorite
gas
one.
house.
Although, rewatching this, I realize a lot of the things I like about Saw 2 actually happen in Saw 3. So Saw 2 and Saw 3 combined are kind of my favorite. I always forget what happens in one versus the other. So okay, the Nerve Gas House. There's a bunch of people, 7 of them exactly, and they were put in a house and they were told that the front door would open in 3 hours, and if they uh got to it, then great. But the problem is they would die within 2 because they were using the same nerve gas that was used at Shinrikyo, which is so fucking that whole cult is great and not in a good way. I mean, like it's fucked up. And so each test that they were doing would award them at least one antidote, so they had to go find all these tests in the house and complete them. And the safe in their room contained one syringe, and the combination to the safe was in the back of their minds, i.e., written on the back of their necks, except for the one big beefy guy. He had the most neck and he had the least numbers. And then they had to be entered in the order of color of the rainbow. So that's the overall thing. Pretty fun. Holy shit, there's a whole bunch of people in this trap and they're not chained to things. That's cool. The very first trap, the Magnum eye hole. The message told them not to open the door with the key. One person did it. Another guy got shot in the face. What do you think of that game, JD? Do you think that that's a game that you could win if another person got you shot in the face because they did a thing they were told not to?
Let me be clear, Michelle, because I don't remember the details as specifically as
Yeah.
you do. This is one of the
Yeah.
unwinnable Amanda traps, right?
No, this
Oh,
is
really?
not. When they wake up in the room, they are told, do not use this key on the door. I think he says like it won't work or something. And then I don't know if he explicitly says this to him or if they just wait, but eventually the door unlocks on its own. However, one person's like, he told us not to use the key on the lock. We're going to do it. So he did it. And there was a gun pointing at the people and it just shoots another guy in the face and now
Right.
he's dead.
Yeah.
That's a game I couldn't win.
No, I
Another
mean,
person being an idiot, I would
right,
die.
yeah, and that's again thematically those sorts of things aren't as interesting to me, because it's that person who died wasn't involved in any way. I think I even appreciate more Amanda's unwinnable games because she at least presents the idea that there's a game involved. That's just a situation where some fucking asshole did something he shouldn't have done and got somebody else killed.
Do you like it from a story perspective as a viewer, not a participant in this universe? Because it does set the stage that, hey, there's other people involved, and those people might make mistakes that now lead to you being dead and you had nothing to do with it. And there's only one test out of this entire movie that is actually performed by the person it's intended to be performed by. So it's saying, like, rules are off the table. Like, you thought I was going to test you individually. No, it's now dependent on everybody else. And like the other big tests in this don't happen to the people that they're actually intended
Is
for.
this
So I do
is
like
this
it.
the movie that has the shotgun circle?
No, that's Saw 6.
Man,
You're thinking
I don't
way in
remember how
advance. I
any of
know.
this stuff goes together.
Oh, I'll
Anyway,
remind
yeah.
you. Okay, the first test is Obi Tate. They get down into the room downstairs, and there's a furnace, and he's told he has to go into the furnace in order to get an antidote, but that there is a second antidote, and if he wants, he can grab that one and then give it to another person. So he climbs into the furnace, no problem, grabs one, he's free. Then he decides he's going to take the other one, and when he takes the second one, the door to the furnace closes, and he burns alive, and both antidotes burn with him. This is, I don't understand it
Yeah, this
from,
is
like,
if
he's
you
trying
if
to
yeah, if
help
you try
other
to help
people.
yeah, we tell you that there's a way that you can, if you're not selfish and put yourself at more risk by being in this predicament for a longer period of time, you can also save one of your friends. And for having the audacity to not be so selfish and try to help save somebody else, he fucking dies. That seems very out of character.
It feels like an Amanda trap, and at this
Mhm.
point we know maybe it was.
Possibly.
Maybe she
Yeah.
didn't tell John about that. I have no fun, because this is also the start. Yeah, this is kind of the no, this is not when she's being tested yet. Never mind. She's just part of this test. I don't know Amanda's whole deal. She's got a way more complicated life than John Kramer.
Yeah,
Yeah, that test
that's
makes
another
no
part of
sense
the
to me.
preposterousness of this whole thing is it's just like, oh, Amanda started doing her own things, but apparently he was aware of it and was secretly testing her back the entire time. There's like layers upon layers of he knows, but I know he knows, but he knows that I know he knows, but I know that he knows that I know that he knows, and it just another layer upon layer upon layer thing.
I just miss the days when I liked Amanda. These are the early days when she was
I
kind of
love
great.
Shawnee Smith.
Oh,
She's
I like her, but Amanda,
pretty.
as it goes on, there's a moment in Saw X where somebody says, "Shut the fuck up, Amanda," and God, I felt that. That's just, I felt it. I felt it.
Next
I
trap.
wanted to cheer. Yes, I know. You agreed to a 2-hour episode, sir. Okay. The Needle Pit was intended for Xavier Chavez because he was a drug dealer, but instead he threw Amanda in there, and she had to find a key attached to a glow stick in a pit of needles in order to unlock the door before the antidote was locked away permanently, and she fails, and Xavier rages. That's
That
just a fucked up
that's
test.
an interesting trap to me. Just because again the visceral experience of being stabbed by dozens and dozens and dozens of needles, that kind of thing. Like flocks and herds of small tiny cuts and punctures. That kind of concept is just very severe to me, but also interesting because I'm gonna make another deathmatch wrestling reference. Several years ago, over in a European promotion, I believe based out of Germany, called WXW. It's a couple of independent deathmatch wrestlers. One of them a European fella went by the name of Thumbtack Jack, and one an American fella by the name of Drake Younger. And they literally had this match that was called the Saw Death Match that involved some pretty ridiculous things, like a guy getting smacked on the back with a steel chair that had a bunch of razor blades attached to it. And after he gets hit, you can see just like lines of razor blade cuts in his back. But one of the big finish spots is they do this. They bring out a giant tub full of empty hypodermic needles, and one of them gets dropped into it. And again, it's fucking horrifying. I'll have to send you a clip of that too. But
Oh,
it's
great. Looking forward to that.
yeah, it's interesting to me how much crossover there is between a Saw movie and deathmatch wrestling.
I have a weird reaction to this scene because the needle pit sounds so ASMR-y to me,
Uh
because
huh.
I grew up in a family of florists where we had water picks in the back, and they would be empty, and I would just put my hands in there and shuffle them around, and it
Okay.
sounded just like the needles in this pit. So I'm like, man, that just relaxes me. this woman in excruciating pain has like a oh man, I like that sound kind of reaction. But as an actual trap, if I was in that pit, I probably wouldn't find it as nice to have
That's
those
another one
sounds.
because Amanda goes into that trap, right? Into
Yeah, he
that
just
pit.
picks her up
Yeah,
and throws her in there.
right. And like that's another thing where it's yet another situation in this movie where somebody is put into a terrible situation by somebody not Jigsaw. It's one of the other people just
Mhm.
involved in the trap and
Mhm.
ends up suffering because she's trying to help everyone. There's a lot of
Yeah.
that in this film now that I stop to think
Yeah.
about it.
That's why I like the guy getting shot in the face because it tells you that's going to happen. And then happens again where a person, this trap was probably intended for Amanda, but it was completed by, well, attempted by Addison. And that is the razor box, which is a box suspended from the ceiling. And there are holes for hands, and there is an antidote inside the box. And as she puts her hand into the box, she starts cutting her wrist open with a razor. And then her solution is, I'm going to put my other hand in the other hole. Now both my hands are stuck in the hole. And now I'm cutting both my wrists open. The worst part, this is one of those movies I have seen the bonus features on because I loved it so much as a teenager that I had to watch everything about it. I was very curious. I did not notice. I don't know if you noticed. She did not listen to the recording, but if you watch that scene, you can see the box with a lock on the other side and a key already in it so she could open the box and get the antidote.
Now, do you think that was done deliberately, or is it
Yes,
a continuity error in the production?
it's deliberate. They pointed out in the bonus features that
Oh,
it's
okay,
supposed to be like a
fair
there was
enough.
a way
No,
around it
that's
thing.
awesome. That's
God,
very
I did
clever.
not know it. Yeah, but no, that I have a thing about wrist cutting and I could not do
Well,
that.
and you and
Also, I would definitely not put my second fucking hand in there.
right,
I'd try to like
right.
use the one free hand to help the hand that is no longer free.
And you
That's
and I
just
have
cheesy.
definitely talked before about how stuff with hands definitely gets me. For me, it's usually more like physical, like crushing trauma and or like fingers being
Oh,
snapped and broken than.
well, we got some good
Uh,
traps for you later
but
then.
she fucking degloves both hands in this ultimately, doesn't she? Or they at least
We
come out
don't
just
see it, but
shredded to shit.
she never gets out of the
Oh,
box.
right.
Yeah. But I'm assuming that at some point when she passes out from blood loss, if she comes out, her hands are staying. At least a good
Oh
chunk
yeah.
of them
Also,
are.
if she passes out from
Woo!
blood loss, she's gonna collapse and probably just rip
That's what
her
I
hands
mean.
out immediately.
Exactly. She's gonna pull. Oh God, yeah, that one.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that was a
that's
very
that's one
short
that's
part of
definitely a
this movie.
contender against that reverse bear trap. I
Oh,
just have to reiterate the reverse bear trap hit so hard because it just like that's the statement they made at the beginning, and fuck, I was like, okay, let's do this.
I could barely handle it. Okay. The overall game, aside from the overall game that we thought we were already watching, Psych, there's another one, and it's Detective Eric Matthews. He, at the beginning of this movie, found John Kramer, and John Kramer told him to sit tight and just wait with him because his son was in a safe and secure state. And all he had to do was talk to John for 2 hours. But Eric's an impatient son of a bitch. And he attacked John and took him and made him take him to the house. But it turns out everything was recorded hours ago. His son was in the safe and secure state in the room. And if he had just stayed there and not been a hothead, he would have just found his son and he would have had this nice conversation with John and they'd be friends and he'd write to him from prison. And instead, Eric is now chained in the bathroom from the first movie.
Yeah, and like, what? So, what's my reaction to this supposed to be? Like, oh, if you had just not freaked out about the psycho serial killer threatening your son's life and just managed to stay calm and keep your composure, you wouldn't be in the bathroom and you'd have your like it. I never at any point become part of that partial team Jigsaw, right? It's like I feel like there's a certain amount of, well, if you had just listened to the man talk and let him have his piece, everything would have been fine, but you couldn't do that. And like it smacks too much of attempting to get me to sympathize with Jigsaw a little bit, or not even necessarily sympathize with him, but not sympathize with the other people. And this is where some of the story starts to get less interesting to me.
I disagree. I fucking love this ending. I don't think it makes me sympathize with Jigsaw, but it does show me that he's a criminal mastermind, which is what they were trying to show, that he understands
You
human
didn't get that
behavior.
already just from that first movie?
This is emphasizing it. He has a whole house full of people and there's a boy in a safe. That's crazy. And
Here's
there's a
my
whole
okay. So at
theme.
what point did he find the time to record this videotape of the dude's house or whatever for several hours, while he's also setting up all these other traps, and while he's having cancer, and while all this other stuff is going down?
We know he has at least 3 assistants. And these are not crazy elaborate traps. He could have taken a year to put this house together.
It's not
He's a
that the
real estate
traps are
agent in
elaborate,
addition to
Michelle.
an engineer and a
It's
doctor.
the same thing I've been saying, which is it's just the sheer volume of the layers and interconnectednesses.
Listen, JD, it's just fun, okay? It's just fun. And here's the thing, I don't sympathize with Jigsaw. I think, holy shit, this guy's a genius. And it begins the theme that we see throughout the rest of these series about how corrupt their police department is. In that this officer should not be beating the shit out of a suspect. If anything, like take him down to the station. He's going along with this only until it no longer suits him, and then he's no longer going
Well,
along with it, and that's kind of what Jigsaw's trying to
and
expose.
that's again another part of it that yeah, okay, so like you said, yes, now Jigsaw is trying to expose corrupt cops. Like like how am I supposed to hate him when he's trying to expose corrupt cops? Like it definitely feels like at this point like they're very much wanting you to not necessarily sympathize with him killing people, but be able to say, well, I at least understand where he's coming from. At least in the first several, like the people, I felt like we're getting to a point here where I'm feeling more and more like genuinely like the people who die kind of deserve it, right? Whereas earlier on, it's becoming less and less of a stretch that his victims don't deserve this. And that's a problem for me. I need to be able to fundamentally. I can't agree. Once you make me agree with Jigsaw's motives, like this is no. I don't want to sympathize with a psychopath. I'm out.
Interesting. I love the gray area. Let me live in that gray area. That's a huge appeal to me of like, oh man, whose side am I on? It's not all black and white.
Well,
Sometimes
and
John
for
Kramer does
me,
things I agree with.
well, that's what I'm
Like
saying is like this is like these movies fucking make me be on the side of corrupt cops because my options are corrupt cops or a psychopath serial killer, right?
You got other options. Third option, Michelle just hanging out in her basement having a good old time watching this man kill other
No,
people.
I mean within the context of the stories, though, right? You're either
I
team
know, I'm
killer
trying
or
to
you're team
make
corrupt
a joke.
cop.
Why can't I be both?
Oh, why do I have
can't
to be either?
Actually, I was about to say, instead of neither, I choose both. I team killer or team corrupt cop, both. You know what? It's not a neither situation. I'm on anybody's side. If they give me, we talked about this a little bit. They give me a red starburst.
what we're
100%. That's the
what we're
side I'm
learning
on.
here is that Michelle is gonna support you as long as you're killing people. She doesn't care who you are or who you're killing.
But not me.
She just wants you to
If
kill
you're killing
people.
me, if you're killing me, it's questionable about whether I will support that.
That's fair.
Not sure.
Oh.
Okay, so ends Saw 2, which I fucking love
Wait,
that.
that
movie.
was
It's one
still
of my
just
favorite
number
horror
2?
movies.
I thought we had moved on to number 3.
Well, now we're gonna move on to number 3 because number 3 is that same story, kind of. It starts with the classroom trap, and there's a guy named Troy, and he has 11 chains attached to him through his hands, his shoulders, his arms, his oblique, and one through his jaw. And he has to rip himself away from all of these chains before the timer goes off. And they are like, wow, this guy couldn't have gotten out because the door was closed. And how would he have gotten out? It's rigged. Do you want me to just go through these really fast? You look like you're so over the Saw franchise.
No, I'm just like I'm in it at this point. I'm just
Okay.
in the back of my head. I'm just like, we said 2, and this is gonna go 3.
Nah.
You don't think so?
15 minutes of that was your dog pottying. We're fine.
Fair
We
enough.
got time to edit if it really gets there. This is why we did it the night before for once. Okay.
I do think,
So,
though,
yeah, this
that
dude has to
more and
rip
more as we
himself.
go along, I'm not going to have as much to. I think I've said everything I need to say about just my reaction to the story here. So, yeah, I think I'm going to let you go ahead because I know you have a lot of structured
Cool.
thoughts. And just if I have, if you inspire me to say anything, I'll chime in or I'll talk about a particularly hideous trap or something.
Okay. I love Hideous Trap. So,
I am
yeah, this one, there's
responsible
11
for
chains.
I'm responsible for so many of the derailings of this train.
I mean, I did learn a lot about death matches in our Saw.
Look, you haven't lived until you've watched a person literally for real drop another person into a crate full of hypodermic needles, and then you watch that guy come out of that crate and he's got several hypodermic needles jammed into his back and his arms and shit, and then you watch as they slowly one by one pull them out of his body. It's fucking hideous.
You just described the scene from Saw 2, but it was Amanda.
Yeah.
This is exactly how that unfolds.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Troy, he's got a whole bunch of chains attached to him. He's got to rip them out. I couldn't do it. Not because it would hurt, but because I am a weak person. If you put a ring, like metal, into my jaw, I'm going to try. It's not going to work very well. I don't know about you, JD.
Same.
Yeah, there's no fucking way. And then it turns out it couldn't be passed anyway, but they didn't need to like weld the door shut for that to happen. They could just put me there and they'd be like, she never had a chance. Like, poor guy. Then we got the angel trap. Detective Allison Carey. One of the traps I feel like I could have kicked ass at, except he has a leather harness attached to her, and she is told that the harness is attached to her ribs and that she has to unlock it before the harness opens and splays her open, and she dies.
Is
and she has to just.
this the cop that was in Starship Troopers?
Yes.
Dina
Is
Myers?
she Starship Trapper? I don't remember.
Yeah,
her
she
name.
was.
I believe
she
so.
was Diz,
It's the lady.
the curly
She's
haired
the
one.
lady. Her
Yeah.
name's Detective Allison Carey.
Okay.
And so she has to put her hand into a jar of acid, grab a key, unlock the harness within 60 seconds. I could fucking do that.
Absolutely
The problem is unlocking the harness did nothing. One of the few ones that I feel like I would have a fighting chance at, nothing. She still gets completely angeled. You couldn't do that?
I don't think I could ever physically bring myself to shove my hand into a vat of acid that I know is going to eat my hand apart. Like, I think I just
Interesting.
physically wouldn't be able to do it. That's my
Okay.
reaction to so many of these traps, honestly, is I feel like my reaction to most of them would be so dog shit terrified of either option that I wouldn't be able to make a decision and I would just run out of time and die.
I would love to see that Saw scene where they're like, okay, you got 60 seconds. And just in real time, no cutaway, we're watching a guy just go,
Just have a fucking
and then
panic
60
attack
seconds later, he
breakdown, and
yeah,
then
exactly.
he just dies.
No
Yeah.
moving, one cut instead of all these jump cuts that they do in these with like the crazy music. It's just a guy, no music, just him going,
Or just,
I don't.
for me, it would
ugh.
be way more intense than that. I'd probably just be like screaming in terror, begging and pleading for my life the entire time, and then my
That
head
puppet
would
ain't gonna let you
explode.
off the hook.
Right?
Oh, so sad.
I'm a coward,
So yeah,
Michelle.
the
Do you
the
not
one
know
I
this?
feel like I'm so worried that by doing this episode, somebody's gonna be like, "Fuck, I want to see if that's true," and they're gonna make me put my hand in a jar of acid. Please don't do that. I'm a soft lady. I'm just saying, in the context of the Saw universe, where apparently this is so common
Hang
that they
on.
have support groups, that's one I
What-
would want to be given.
I just had a thought.
Oh dear God.
What kind of acid is it? If it's the right
I don't-
kind of acid, I might dip my whole hand in it. That'd be
You
kind
know
of
what,
nuts.
man? Oh no! If they were like,
Then
"Hey,
I go watch
do
Mad
acid,"
God.
I would still have a panic attack. I've never done acid. I'm not good at drugs. Okay.
I'm
Then
not good
we've
at
got-
drugs. That's the best
not
way to
good
say it. I love it. Anyway,
God, I don't want to be stuck in
Are
my
you
head.
guys
It's
still
very
with
scary
us
place.
in this episode?
I
Thank you so much for
am. I'm
hanging out.
trying
You
to
guys are
speed
dope.
run.
Make sure you drop by our social medias and stuff at some point and tell us what
I
you
love
think about
talking
the
to you
Saw
guys.
movies.
Hey, John Humphreys. I'm sending him a gift because I liked his Halloween costume.
And
So I have
then
John Humphreys' address now, and I will be there with a vat of acid.
shout out to Sam. Shout
Yeah.
out,
Talk to
what's
Sam
his
every
name?
day.
Jim just hooked up with us. Recommended a movie for us to watch. I think his
I
name
have
is
it
Jimmy.
screenshotted in my phone, but
That's all
I
right. We
did
got
not
Saw
memorize
movies to
it.
talk about. I'm sorry for
I
derailing us
know.
again.
No, it's okay. My trap is trying to remember everybody's names. I recognize their profile pictures. I'm just terrible at the name part. Speaking of Jeff, we have a second Jeff. The first Jeff, he died for unexplainable reasons in Saw 1 when he got drilled. Or no, he actually survived that. He could have died. Now we have a second Jeff, and this is Jeff's trial, aka the shotgun collar for Dr. Lynn Denlon. This is the overarching game, and basically Dr. Lynn, she is told that she has to wear a shotgun collar and she has to keep Jigsaw alive. And if she does that, everything's fine. And then Jeff, he's in a different place and he's told, hey, man, I'm sorry about your son. We brought all the people who made that happen. Not even like made that happen, but like justice wasn't served. Like we found a bunch of them and they're in other rooms. Go ham. And so Jeff walks into the first room, and this is the only nudity in the entirety of the series, as far as I know. There is a woman naked in a freezer being covered in water, and she's going to freeze to death because she pretended not to see Jeff's son get killed. And all he has to fucking do is put his face against a cold pipe and grab a key. And this man can't even think to put up his shirt as a little bit of a barrier. And instead, he's like, no, it's so cold.
Which is also curiously, and I may be wrong about this, if somebody out there is a science person who can confirm or deny, the interesting thing about that nudity is if I understand the way cold and freezing works, that would be far more excruciating a death if she was fully clothed when they started dumping all that water on her, because the water would absorb into the clothing as well as encasing her in ice. I don't know. But I feel like it would be maybe I don't maybe I'm the one who's wrong about the science on that. But I immediately started thinking, yeah, but wouldn't that be so much worse if she was? Because there's this thing you can do with warm soda pop cans to cool them off real quick, where you wrap the can in wet paper towels and then put it in the freezer for like a half an hour, and it gets really cold. And so I don't know if it's the same sort of thing. Do you know science out there? Somebody get in touch with us. Tell us if I'm right or not.
You just compared this naked lady to a can of Mountain Dew.
But no, I compared heat transfer to heat transfer is what I did, Michelle.
Well, I just think if you're going to have one scene of nudity, this is the weird spot, and I want to know why.
Oh, for sure.
This is the one.
Well, I think the reason they did it here is because in their mind, being frozen to death naked must be worse than being frozen to death fully clothed, because the idea is you want to stay insulated. But like they tell you, like when you're out in the like you don't want to, like if you're out in the cold and you fall into a river or something. You're gonna you want to get somewhere and get out of the wet clothes as soon as possible, because it's gonna freeze a lot faster and be a lot more problematic for you. And so that's kind of where I was coming at. I think it would have been technically for her an even worse experience if she was clothed, because it might be faster and more painful. But I feel like that's probably what they were going for, is that idea of being naked in the excruciating cold. Because if you were just out like in the cold in the winter in a blizzard, you would want to be fully clothed. It would be far worse that way. The functional problem is once you get soaking wet, which one is worse now? So I expect that's why they did it. I expect that's why she was naked.
How many of these strong opinions are driven because you grew up in North Dakota and have too much knowledge about what it's like to be in the freezing fucking cold trying not to die each year?
Yeah. I've also seen that.
I have been outside fully clothed, freezing to death every winter.
That happens in movies all the time. Somebody's out in the cold and then they fall into like a super cold body of water. They always take them inside and they're like, you got to immediately get these wet clothes off and warm up.
These goddamn LA makers, they don't know what it's like to be cold.
Somebody out there listening knows the science. Tell us. social medias, email, all the details at the end of the episode.
Well, the next detail that I'm going to get into is Judge Halden, and he's put in a pit, chained by his neck at the bottom of a pit. And this was the judge who let the guy get off with a light sentence. And now they're just bringing in pigs and they're blending them and they're uh, putting him in the vat with the judge. And he's getting fucking waterboarded by rotten pigs. This is one of the worst traps in the entire series for me because I think if they had positioned his body the other way so it wasn't going up his nostrils, this makes me physically ill. That's why I think Saw 3 made such an impact. This and then the one right after it is the rack. That is a lot
Yeah,
for me
I
in a
feel
very
like
short amount of time.
this one is definitely the high point just so far as the fucking make me want to puke factor. Because it's not just like pig, it's fucking rotten, festering pig carcasses. And it's like he's just
Where'd they all come from?
He's probably that's a good yet another question, Michelle, that makes this movie so incredibly absurd.
What did the pigs do to wind up in the trap?
I
Did they
imagine
fail
I
other
imagine
traps?
somewhere in that timeline that I never bothered to finish reading on account of how obscenely long it is. There's some entry about how Jigsaw went to the butcher shop and asked for like 17 pig carcasses and then left them in a shed for 6 months in the middle of the summer heat so that they rotted and festered. You know, as long as we're talking about all this other preposterous stuff, that's probably what happened.
He did have one alive pig, and that pig's job was to find a way out, and it failed. So it just
sure
became
did.
one of the other 17. So sad.
It just basically
that
looked like
one's
he was being
awful.
covered in vomit until he drowned in vomit, and that's disgusting.
But then he lived for a little bit. Then he got shotgunned in the face during the rack
For sure.
because Jeff managed to do it right and then still killed him.
Damn it, Jeff.
Oh, that was so frustrating. Okay, so then Jeff's final test is to either forgive John and save himself, his wife, and the daughter, which, oh my God, Jenna and I talked about this one for a long time because, like, Jigsaw's person he's going to test in this one is a man whose son has died and he's in a failing marriage with his wife who's cheating on him and he has a strained relationship with his daughter and Jigsaw's just like, man, fuck that family, and now the daughter's an orphan. Like, how are you helping anyone?
Just a point of clarification quickly, Michelle. Would that be Jenna who never watches the movies before she listens to our episode reviews?
The same one, but she does watch all of the Saw movies before she listens to this episode.
That's
guaranteed.
Well,
So
the Saw movies got a several-year jump start on us.
That's true. And she did see Saw X at my house, so she's good now. But we're not talking about that one. Instead, we're talking about Jeff's final test. And so he's told either save his family or kill Jigsaw. And then he's like, I'm going to kill Jigsaw. But then he kills Jigsaw in like the most boring way possible. Like, you're going to pick up like a very like medical saw and just cleanly cut his throat. That's it.
I guess.
You're full of rage and this is what you do. It's a little disappointing. But then that does mean that his wife's shotgun collar goes off. But then, oh man, Amanda's test failed because she was supposed to keep Lynn alive. And she didn't do that. This might have actually happened in the other reverse order. I don't fucking care. Who knows? Was this a flashback? Maybe. But she was supposed to keep Lynn alive because she didn't know that Jeff is married to the fucking doctor. Oh man, that dude we saw Dr. Lynn with at the beginning, that was the affair partner. So when she said, "What do you want?" and he says, "I want a divorce," he was referring to his wife that he's cheating on. Oh man, they're not the married people. These two, that blew my fucking mind. I'm like very much playing it up, but like, oh man, when I found out they were married.
The wild smoke and mirrors that you could have never figured out on your own, that blew your mind. The Deus Ex Machina going on here blew your mind.
Yep, it absolutely did. Thanks for asking. On to Saw 4. Okay, Saw 4.
We got a lot of movie here.
I'm trying. You just keep talking about wrestling, though. I'm trying. Okay, the mausoleum. One of like the most visually appealing traps It's not even like super gory. It's very brightly lit. That's so rare in these movies. It is Trevor and Art, and a winch is pulling them closer together. And Trevor's eyes are sewn shut, and Art's mouth is sewn shut. So Art can see Trevor trying to kill him, and Trevor can hear Art, but he can't see him. The most frustrating thing about this is that Trevor dies, and then Art rips his mouth open to scream. You waited? You could have like, hey man, I'm over here. Like you could have done that earlier. Why did you wait until did you not like that guy? What did Trevor do to you? That's pretty fucking
Yeah.
stupid. I think I could do it though. I think I could duck and dodge. If I was the person with my eyes sewn shut, no fucking way. I am terrified of completely losing my vision and that nope. No thank you. No.
I again
I have really bad eyesight and that scares me a lot.
again for this,
But the
like
other guy maybe.
I'm not remotely insecure enough to not admit it. Uh, like I'm very physical pain averse, and I don't know if I could even force myself to rip my mouth open in that situation. I think I would try, and as soon as I got to a certain point, I wouldn't be able to go any further. I think I would fail every one of these fucking traps.
We'll find one you have a chance at.
No, you won't.
It
Michelle, I watched the movies. I saw every one of the traps. I promise you there's not a
just you
single
wait.
one of these that I would survive. Not one.
I know one of them. We'll get to it. I do have to say that when you even have to be a life and death situation, if somebody was like, "You have to be quiet for me," I'd be like, "Fuck no!" Like rip my mouth on. Like I cannot be quiet. So yeah, if my mouth
Oh,
was
and
sewn
I
shut, yeah,
can? Have you
I'm getting
listened
out
to
of
the
that.
last hour and a half of this podcast?
No, I have completely blinked out. My ears are sewn shut. It is my trap. Okay, the next trap, the knife chair. Oh man, I guess if I had to pick a favorite, this one's up there because it is intense. Cecil Adams, he has to push his face into the knives hard enough that he can press a button with his head and release himself. I don't remember the exact quote, but something about making his outsides as ugly as his insides. That one's intense. Those
Yeah,
are some sharp
yet
knives.
another one that a big part of it for me and why it gets to me is just the multiple points of stabbing, cutting pain. But yeah, fucking Jesus. Yeah, you can. That's another thing that I want to, because I mentioned earlier how, as much as I think the sheer scope of everything is so preposterous, there's at least well structured connection between it all. Also, uh, I don't know who's responsible for dreaming up and designing all of these fucking machines and death and torture concepts for this franchise, but these people are fucking sick. And they continue to like they recycle a few things along the way, but the way that they are able to continue coming up with new and inventive terrifying ways to be murdered is fucking impressive.
I could do this one with one caveat. He would need to have he would need to give me goggles. I do not want these knives touching my eyes. I think as we're going through these, I'm realizing if it's eye related, that's gonna be the hardest thing for me. So the last guy having his eyes sewn shut, the having to cut with a razor blade into my eye to get a key. This one, if I had goggles on and I just had to like fuck up the rest of my face, I'm fine. But the idea of one of those touching my pupil, no fucking way.
I think
I
it's
would have a
easy.
very hard
I think
time
it's
with
easy
that
to say
particular
that,
part.
Michelle, until you have your face in the rack and you feel 17 knife blades all start to cut into your face, stab into your face simultaneously.
I would be so mad if he built this thing and chose 17 knives.
Every,
Like not an even number on both sides and you're picking a prime number?
Michelle,
Nuh-uh.
he's trying to
John
make him
Kramer,
as ugly
no.
on the outside as he is on the inside. Of course, there's going to be an odd number. They're definitely not going to be symmetrical. Symmetry is beauty. Don't you know that, Michelle?
Why is my face so fucked up but the rest of me so fine then? Okay, the overall game for this is Rigg's Trial, Officer Daniel Rigg. And this one is probably my least favorite out of the entire series. I just didn't really care. I thought the reveal was fine. But basically, he's told that he has to stop being obsessed with saving everyone around him. He thought that he had 90 minutes to save Eric Matthews. You remember that Eric Matthews, the one with the son in the safe? He's still safe, but his His son was safe, but he's not safe, but he is alive.
That's not Donnie
He's told he has
Wahlberg, is it? Matthews. That's
mm,
the guy
they
with the kid
all
in the.
look the
Okay,
same.
it
I
doesn't
don't
matter.
remember.
I don't know why I
Anyway,
even asked.
I don't know. But he's told he has 90 minutes until Eric Matthews, his ice block will melt, and that he's told like so many times, like stop trying to help people, and Officer Riggs like, no, I gotta help him, and then he winds up killing Eric because he opens the door. It's just a very silly. I like the reveal, but it was the one that I was like, I don't know who the fuck this guy who didn't get electrocuted is. So that's how we meet Mark Hoffman. It's a little too confusing for me. But there are some things that happen in between. First off, in his house, there is a scalping seat. Riggs was supposed to leave Brenda and not save her from a terrible scalping incident. He's the only one who can see the combination. She can't. But when he does free her, then she decides that she needs to kill him. So then he has to kill her anyway. So that's saying, like, Riggs, knock it off. And then he goes to a hotel, and that's when he meets I-VII. And I-VII's a fucked up person. And Riggs puts him into a bed where each of his limbs are attached to shackles. And then he lays back, and he now has to stab out his own eyes because he's a pervert. Otherwise, his limbs will be torn off. I don't know what the fuck that has to do with Riggs because the whole thing is supposed to be like don't help people and then he doesn't help him. So like did he pass the game? I understand like when I watched it I was like okay, I get it. Like you're just supposed to like see what I see like he keeps writing on the walls even though that was intended for Hoffman. There's a whole thing. But that just it felt so
There's just
out of
one
place
whole thing,
and
Michelle.
weird.
There are a lot of whole things.
Just one whole thing out of the entire pervert room. That's my breaking point. I've been in the pervert hotel room was my breaking point. And then we have the spike trap, which I actually love. So Morgan and Rex, if I had to pick a favorite, would it maybe be the spike trap potentially. Morgan and Rex. Morgan was abused by Rex. In order to survive, she had steak she is standing back to back with husband, I'm assuming. And she has stakes going through her limbs that are also going through his limbs, but they are going through major arteries. So by pulling these spikes out, she is killing him and he will bleed to death faster than she will. So as she saves herself and frees herself, she has to harm her abuser. And then Riggs, I think he gives her a key when he comes and he stumbles across that. But I fucking love that. JD's laughing. You're laughing at this woman's pain.
No,
I love it. It's
no. What
poetry.
happened is you said she had stakes going through her limbs, and for some reason I visualized like a ribeye tearing through her bicep, and it just made me laugh.
You hurt this cow. The cow will hurt you.
She's got a
Okay. Well, I
T-bone
really
in
like
her
Morgan
femur.
Rex. Femur, more like femur. It's T-bone. A T-bone, like a femur
Yeah,
bone. Okay.
yeah.
Saw 5.
Sorry, I
Saw
just
5
cracked
has
myself up. That was so
no, it's
fun.
okay. Saw 5 has my favorite overall game by far.
Okay.
It does start with the pendulum trap, which is Seth Baxter, who had killed Hoffman's sister. We find that out later, and it's an important thing. And a pendulum is swinging down towards him. Within 30 seconds, it's going to touch his body, but within 60 seconds, he is going to be cut in half. And all he has to do is press these buttons and crush his hands and be freed.
Some Edgar Allan Poe
You could do
shit
that,
right
right,
there.
JD? Yeah, you love hand stuff. You could do this, right? You could press buttons and crush your own hands
Oh no, no,
and save
Michelle! How
yourself.
many times do I have to say in this
I
episode?
know,
There's not a fucking one of these things that I could.
I
Absolutely
know,
not.
I know. You would not like this one. This one was also rigged, but rigged. Man,
Uh,
they should have instead of Hoffman, it should have been Riggs
you should
because
have
then you
wrote
could say
for
the
these
game was
movies,
rigged.
Michelle.
I should. Please hire me. I will write Saw 11. I will be the new Jigsaw. But yeah, no, like they've been like, fuck, it was the Joker all along from like Adam West Batman, but it was rigged. We should have known it was Riggs. But yeah, he wasn't gonna have the ability to get out. And then it's not even a trap. Special Agent Peter Strom was told not to leave the room or some shit, but then he leaves the room and now his head's in a cube and he's gonna drown, but luckily he can perform a tracheotomy on himself.
Yeah.
Tracheotomies I love medical dramas and I love reading how bad they are at being medically accurate. So I know that tracheotomies are one of those things that like seem so simple according to movies and TV shows and will probably kill you from
Oh,
drowning on your own blood. There's no
right.
fucking
Well,
way.
but also,
This is my limit.
I hate to break it to you guys, but the death by drowning isn't so much because you can't breathe as it is because you start inhaling water into your lungs, and a tracheotomy isn't going to stop you from doing that. Like you're
But
still,
if you start inhaling through your throat,
yeah, but he's got his head in a
I
bucket
know.
full of water. He's panicky and shit. He's still going to swallow a
Excuse
bunch of
me, it's a
that.
cube. I
It
do
was a
appreciate
cube-shaped
that.
bucket.
I do appreciate that they built this entire water holding glass cube, which
Yeah.
by like the physics of that is impressive.
And
How did they
yeah,
know the
you're
neck
right.
would be the right size?
There's
But
so
they
much.
also lit it up. They made sure it looked good.
Yeah, you're so right. There's so much sensitive stuff going on in that area of the neck. Like you have to be so precise with how and where you make your cuts. This is again more and more preposterous the further we go.
Was Carrie Elway in charge of that tracheotomy too? Such a good
Probably.
doctor saving that guy. Okay, the overall game for this one is the Fatal Five, which I will just go through quickly because there's no way that we would survive 90% of these because they do require teamwork.
100%.
So the first one is that five people wake up and they are told that they have to free themselves by getting a key on the other side of the room. And in order to get the key, they each have to hang tight, like back at the back area, and then one person will go get their key, and then they'll come back, and then another person will go get their key. One girl doesn't get a key; she's essentially decapitated. And then they go into the next room, and now they're told that they have to smash the jars in the ceiling to find a key in order to hide in these tunnels before a bomb goes off. So they do that, and they like knock one guy out, or however that happens. So then now there's three left. And now the three, including Megan Good, I think is her name. I loved her when she was on Disney stuff. So she is now in the room with the other three, or the other two. So now there's three of them, and there's a bathtub, and they're like, "Oh, we have to make these touch the water." So the one bitch just stabs her, and now there's a corpse, and they're just attaching all the things to the corpse. So now there's two left, and then they get to 10 pints of sacrifice, where they realize when they were told to fight against their instincts they should have done it because five of them would only have to give up 2 pints of blood and they could have survived all of the traps. So the first one, the key was the same. They could have gotten one key and unlocked everybody. And then the next room, I noticed this while watching them. The tunnels were big enough that more people could hide in them. And then the next one with the bathtub, they could have all gotten just a little shock instead of Megan Good getting all the shocks. And now, one guy has a bifurcated arm in order to get out of that. And then Dexter's girlfriend is now very much out of it and very weird.
Nice,
And I thought it was
nice vocabulary pull with the bifurcated there.
bifurcated.
And
Thank you.
you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, every one of these would have been winnable, but like, to be fair, you're talking about people under incredible stress in a traumatizing situation. At what point, after you've explained to them, oh, you're all chained to these things and you have to run forward one at a time to get your keys, and so only one of you can go at a time, these people are in full-blown panic mode. At what point is anybody going to rationally be like, hey, maybe the one key would work in every lock. Let's just try that first. No, they're all.
Well, maybe if they had taken 15 minutes to plan like he told them that they had, instead of waiting 1 minute and then going, nah, fuck this, and running towards it, they could have discussed that because they were told they had time
Michelle,
and they didn't use it. They're dumb.
I think you drastically overestimate the ability of the average person to remain even remotely calm and rational and think clearly in any of these situations.
Everybody else in that situation was rational. That guy was a tweaker. They talked about that. That's why he
Right.
was freaking the fuck out.
Right. Well, what I'm.
Oh, I haven't even.
I don't.
I am realizing
What I'm saying is.
I'm not even talking about like how these people are linked in any of these movies. We got to start over.
No,
I'm not.
No, what I'm saying is that to be totally frank, I think that granted he is a tweaker, but I think the tweaker had the more believable response.
And that's why you won't survive any of these traps.
Right.
Yep.
You're absolutely
Okay.
right. What I'm saying is that those people who all remained calm, that's movie fantasy bullshit. that would not ever happen. Those people
I think
would
there's
all be panicking.
this is the fifth movie, and it's the first time we're seeing somebody be calm. So they are showing it is a minority, but maybe they should have listened to that lady who was smart and did figure it out and was the only person who survived.
Michelle,
So
you can't. You have to judge people's behavior in stressful, traumatizing situations with that context in mind. Yeah, in a perfectly normal situation, yeah, they probably should have listened to her and paid attention. They're all panicking.
I think I'm just on the side of John Kramer a lot more than I thought I
I
was.
think
He's like, he's probably so frustrated. He's like, God damn it, why listen to that lady?
I
I
think
forgot he's been dead for a while,
I
but
think
still.
maybe you just have a high, maybe unrealistic expectation of how not panicked you would be and how much pain you can endure.
Only one way to find out.
Let's get her in a
And
trap.
that is through the last trap, which no fucking thank you, the glass coffin.
Nope,
Where
nope.
he's like, you have to trust me and lay in this coffin of glass, which
The fuck I
honestly,
do.
that I probably would do that. Laying down on glass, he's like a little bit of pain. I'm like, yeah, I'm wearing clothes. Like, whatever. That's not, I'm going to slowly put myself in there. I'm not being thrown. But he says, no, fuck that. And then Hoffman goes down in the glass. And then this guy gets smushed. He gets smushed.
It's real
And now
bad.
he is, oh man, when Saw 6 starts and you see him being peeled off the ceiling, that is a great moment.
It was
And now
it
on to
was
Saw 6.
gruesomely delicious. Yes, it was
It was
fantastic.
no squelches, very disappointing. So Saw 6, Pound of Flesh, Simone and Eddie, they have to cut the most flesh off of themselves so that their scale goes down more.
And
I love
the
that.
one dude literally is physically larger, so he has more flesh, and he's way out ahead. And then this lady is just like, fuck it, and hacks off her whole goddamn arm and just drops it on the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have
Smart.
any idea how difficult it would be to cut off your own arm?
I do now, thanks to Simone. She made it look easy, though. Those were, man, what knives was she using? Put that in a
Although, I
commercial.
guess, to be fair, now that I think about it, there was that very famous story from a while back about that guy who was out on a hike in the wilderness, like in the hills or the mountains or whatever, and there was like a small landslide, and he got his arm trapped under a giant rock that he couldn't move. And so he knew he was either going to lay there and dehydrate and starve to death, or he had to do something. So he literally cut his own arm and then, like, right by the elbow, and then separated his arm at the elbow joint and walked the fuck out of there to safety after cutting off his own fucking arm. So
You just
maybe
described an award-winning movie called 127 Hours starring Dave DeFranco. That's not an unknown story.
I didn't say it was an unknown story. I said it was a very well-known
Okay.
story. It just I said it was a thing that happened a while back. But no, I guess so. Maybe this isn't as unbelievable as some of the other ones. But
No, no, she could do it. She could do it. I have faith in her.
think
So
you
this
could
one,
think you could cut your own arm off, Michelle? Yeah, of course you do.
God, no, fuck no, no, I don't. No, that one, hell no. This one, okay, I know I've said like I've got some favorites early on, but fuck, I love Saw 6. William's trial. William is the head of a medical insurance company, and his employees are
Yeah.
going
Once again,
down.
how am I
It's
supposed to
so
feel bad about this?
ridiculous.
How am I supposed
So
to feel? Fuck
ridiculous.
that guy. I mean, absolutely fuck that guy.
But hang on, here's what I love about it. It's William does fine for a while. So the first one is the oxygen crusher with Hank, who I think was a custodian. That's all he did at this company. Jigsaw, aka Detective Hoffman, is like, he's a lifelong smoker. Can you hold your breath more than he can? And then every time you inhale, your ribs get crushed. And like, what the fuck did Hank do to deserve being
He
in this
worked for the
situation with
devil.
William? Apparently. So poor fucking Hank, he gets crushed. And then they go to the trap that is called the gallows. I don't know if this is canon, but this is what sawfilms.fandom.com calls these names of these traps, and I hope that they're canon. But the next one is the gallows. And now William is holding two handles, and he has to let go of one, and that will kill that person. And his options are Addie, his secretary with a nice family who will miss him, and Alan, who's a generic guy who no one cares about. And in order to prove this point, Hoffman, aka Jigsaw, just shows pictures of him eating alone outside. And he's like, clearly he has no friends. Goes to eat by themselves.
I go to eat by
So
myself all the time.
I know it's so silly.
Do you not go to eat by
And he's
yourself all the time, Michelle?
I do. Like, apparently, Jigsaw thinks, like, how have I seen you walking around if you're so sick and eating by yourself at the picnic? God,
Maybe
he
he's
just has,
eating
like,
by
this very
himself
narrow
because he
frame.
needs to eat, but he's also knows he's sick, so he doesn't want to get anybody else sick. Jigsaw, you fucking jerk.
I was just saying it's the same guy from Saw 1.
Jigsaw's a real jerk. Have you noticed that over the course of these movies? He's really kind of a prick.
John Kramer Jigsaw was definitely way better than Hoffman Jigsaw, because Hoffman Jigsaw just, he likes theatrics and they are fucking weird. So he has to choose who to save. And apparently Hoffman just doesn't care about the body count of innocent people because, yay, luckily Addie's the one who gets saved. Fucking Alan. No one likes him. They could have both died. Like, who cares if there's innocent bystanders?
Fucking Alan.
Fucking Alan. And then the steam maze. Debbie, she has 90 seconds to free herself from a steam maze. And William can stop the steam by pulling on a handle, and the steam will shoot into his face instead of Debbie's face, and she can get through. And then to thank him for helping her, she tries to saw him open to get a key inside. And then he kills her anyway. So that was a pointless
This
trap.
is another one where I'm just like, Jesus, just when I thought
There's no fucking way.
Just when
No.
I thought they couldn't come up with even more unique fucking ideas for how to be excruciatingly painful, they hit you with scorching fucking steam. Just like you might as well get blasted with a fucking flamethrower. Holy shit.
I could definitely handle freezing to death better than
Oh
I can
yeah,
handle
freezing you're just gonna
not even burning to death, steaming to
Yeah.
death. You're cooking.
Yeah, freezing you're just gonna
Awful.
slowly go numb, probably fall asleep and go easy. Fucking burn it, heat death just all around. No fucking way.
No fucking way.
Just fucking boiled her
then-
skin off with steam. Jesus.
I could have used a lot more sloughing. but
That's
okay.
that's like the ultimate in multiple tiny cuts all over your body. It's because it's like on the fucking molecular level that hot steam is just ripping all of your flesh apart.
You know so much about science. Molecular level of death.
I tell
Okay.
interestingly enough, Michelle, you happen to know that I also watched all 10 because I just watched the new Hellraiser last year, so I didn't go back and watch that again. But I, for the first time ever, watched all 10 of the Hellraiser films. And you know who would fucking love the Saw franchise is the Cenobites.
Oh,
They would fucking
Oh,
adore this
man.
thing.
I want to see that film.
John
It's
Kramer
definitely
Do you?
X-rated.
I bet you. Oh, Michelle, we gotta find some people. Don't tell anybody this idea that I'm about to spill out on the
Okay.
podcast.
Listeners,
Listen,
plug your ears.
yeah, plug your ears. Don't listen to this. Here's what we do: we write,
Yeah, they're not
we
listening.
write a crossover movie where
Mhm.
it turns out John Kramer becomes Pinhead, because I mean I get it. They already told you who Pinhead was supposed to be, but they retconned so much shit in those movies anyway that what does it matter? But maybe you do like a fan film or so, or maybe he's not even Pinhead. Maybe John Kramer just finds the fucking Marchand box and he becomes like the key. Like he has to fight Pinhead and defeat him to become fucking king of the Cenobites or whatever. I don't know. All I'm saying is I watched a lot of fucking pain over the course of 20 movies. And I see a lot of parallels.
I think that would be an award-winning thing. And here's another thing we know about the Hellraiser franchise. They're not stingy about signing over those rights.
Yeah, no, they
will
are
let
not.
us do this. It's going to be James Wan. That's going to be the struggle of like, let us use your intellectual
Oh well, no,
property. I don't
actually,
know if he's gonna be
the
willing.
Hellraiser people are like that's why so many of those movies keep getting made is because they are clinging to those film rights. Like the last
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like they
Yeah.
will let you make a movie so that they can retain it. Is what I mean.
right, yeah,
Like,
you
yes, make more movies so it's still on.
just a quick aside there. It's so like I feel like several of those later Hellraiser movies would have been better movies if they just hadn't been shoehorned into being Hellraiser movies. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Jigsaw. Jigsaw versus Pinhead. Fucking somebody make it happen.
It's a wrestling match I want to get
Jigsaw versus
And-
Pinhead. Fuck a Freddy versus Jason. Give me a Jigsaw versus Pinhead. You know who else I want to see? I want to see Pinhead against that guy from Star Trek 6 who's trying to take God's pain away. Because I think the pain has a face guy and the your pain runs deep, allow me to share it with you guy would be a hell of a fucking face-off. Anyway, I've distracted us enough. Go ahead, Michelle.
You were never allowed to tell me that I am taking too long to explain a trap ever again. You agreed to a very long thought.
I don't believe I have one time said, Michelle, you're taking too long to describe a trap.
You just did, and I'm going to edit this episode so that you say that earlier on because this is the Saw franchise.
Wait, who's gonna edit this episode?
I will. I will do it. I'm saying I will copy it from the internet and I will re-upload it. Okay. We're putting off one of the best things to ever happen to this show. This movie.
It ending this episode?
No, the shotgun carousel.
Yes, the shotgun carousel.
So
Again,
good.
it's such bullshit because it's one of these things where other people's fates are not in their own hands, you know, and so whatever, but god damn it.
It looked so
many
beautiful when you saw the trailers and you didn't quite understand what was going on. This had me so intrigued. Oh, it's
And then it turns out it's
horrible,
just a
and I
bunch of
love
people
it.
getting blasted in the face with shotguns.
Yeah,
Which I mean, again,
it's like
from
the
a
simplest thing.
visceral gore sort of morbid fascination perspective, I mean, it was something. It was pretty again, very clever. They do like shotguns in this franchise.
They do. I'm disappointed that he didn't at least attempt to put his hand in the thing a third time. Didn't even try. I think the last guy who died just was probably an asshole.
No, once
And he was like,
again,
"No."
I feel like that was honestly one of the most realistic outcomes. Is like fucking they're broken by the challenge and the strain, and they just fucking give up.
That's true. I do love that there was only one guy left and he was like, "Oh, you killed me. Thanks, asshole. It's great." Like, I've worked those jobs where I'm like, my boss would definitely kill me if I was on a carousel, and that's really disheartening. So yeah, he had to save two of his employees, and then he gets to the end of this, and the whole time I thought the lady trapped in one of the cages, because we haven't even talked about the people in the cages. We're not going to. Fuck it. But there is a lady trapped in a cage, and then there's another lady and her son trapped in the other cage, and the whole time I realize now that it's never stated, but the woman and the son I thought were going to be his family, but then it turns out the hot blonde lady is his family and not even a mistress. She's a sister. So just the fact that that dynamic even exists blew my mind before any sort of trap happened. I just went like, she's what? What do they mean this is a lady? And then it turns out that it's the lady whose husband he killed by denying coverage, and now she gets to kill him, but then she decides that she's not going to kill him because she's a good person. And
Jigsaw's
fucking
wife,
hops
right?
on
Jill?
the video. No.
Oh, to see this, I've completely
This
lost
is
track
just-
of what's fucking going on in this franchise.
Oh, we're getting to Jill next, but this is at the end of this game. William walks into a room, and on one side is a cage with his sister, a hot lady, and then the other side is a lady with her son. And then Jigsaw fucking hops on the video. He's like, "I'm so sorry, ma'am, to have put you through all of this. My apologies to make you watch all this gruesome stuff. But now you have a choice to kill this man who's the head of an insurance company if you wanna." And she's like, "I can't do that." And like, he didn't apologize to fucking anybody else ever. And like, what the fuck? Where's Addie, the secretary's apology for almost killing her?
You know who wouldn't have fucking apologized? John Kramer.
That's true. See, Hoffman's Jigsaw is a different flavor. I don't like it. But the lady's like, "No, I forgive him." And the son's like, "Fuck that," and pumps him full of acid. And now he's in different pieces. And that's pretty great. And then we talked about Reverse Bear Trap 2.0. And that's when Hoffman is now put in the bear trap by John Kramer's ex-partner. And that's the part you're thinking about, Jill.
Yeah.
And
he gets his jaw ripped
puts
off.
his face not ripped off, just ripped. Enough to need some sewing. But
And I think that also
okay.
brought to light a big part of why the reverse bear trap to me was always so intense. Is my expectation and interpretation of what was going to happen is that it would just rip their entire skull in half, right? And once I see
Mhm.
it in action, like, don't get me wrong, this is still hideous and vile, and it looks like it would be terrible. But this is very much a case of so much of that experience with the reverse bear trap the first time as I did to myself, because I almost overestimated how severe it was actually going to be. Like, I figured this is a thing that would just smash your entire head to pieces.
No, instead just rips you open, leaves you all tongue.
To the
Okay, the
pain.
final movie. Get to the pain. Oh man, Carrie Elway.
Yes,
Pops back
I
up
was
in this
wondering if you'd
one.
catch that.
Of course I
To
know
the
the fucking
pain.
Princess Bride. Okay, Saw 3D, the final chapter. Just kidding, there's 3 more after this, but this will be our final chapter because we got to get through this. And this is starting to feel like a Saw trap. I'm just telling you, like, we do not edit our episodes. The quick break
Hey,
earlier of JD letting his dog out was our only break.
yeah.
This is all
This is
us.
this is
We're
this
so
is
tired.
freestyle, you
I
guys.
regret suggesting this.
Life
Okay,
is
Saw
pain,
3D.
Michelle. Anyone who says different is selling something. That's also from Princess Bride.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, Saw 3D. This movie, I watched Saw 3 through 6, and then I watched Saw 3D. And this is such a ramp up. After watching the other ones, where I'm like, oh, that's kind of silly. And like the insurance movie, definitely silly. But then Saw 3D, they went, fuck, we're out of movies. We should probably use some of this stuff, huh? So it starts with the public execution trap, which this is a strong contender for a favorite too. This is why I don't just have one. Brad and Ryan, they wake up and they're trying to force a saw at each other. And then there's a lady named Dina who's hanging above them because she's been toying with them. And now she's like, I love you, Brad, kill Ryan. And so he tries to kill Ryan. And then Ryan almost kills Brad. And then she's like, just kidding, I love you, Ryan. And Ryan's like, man, this bitch. And Brad's like, I know, right? So then they just put the saw directly in the middle of them. And then they agree to just saw
Just let
Dina. And the
her
fact
die.
the fact that Jigsaw is like, hey, I saw your Facebook messages and that ain't cool. Like, this is the level of like,
Right. Now we're just
this is what we're doing now. Just small love triangles, not like anything. Just, I don't
right.
like that you're
Just
doing these
one
two
movie
guys, Tina.
ago, or for several movies, we've been murdering corrupt cops and corrupt insurance company businessmen, and now we're just gonna kill a lady who was two-timing a couple of fellas. Just like in the
I got 99
man.
problems, but a bitch ain't one because now she's 2. She is 2
If you're having
different
girl problems, I feel bad
chicken
for you,
sodas.
son.
Ugh.
The year's
Oh man, so
94 and my
that's how this
trunk is
thing
raw and the
begins.
rearview mirror is a motherfucking law. I got 2 choices. Okay, I could do the whole thing. Anyway, go ahead.
Hey, speaking of trunks, the horsepower trap.
Ah, yes.
It's a bunch of skinheads. Evan is super glued into a car, and the wheels. It's like the wheels are elevated and spinning. So now, if he doesn't get to this lever in time, the car is gonna fall down. And then a lot of his friends are gonna die in crazy ways. So he has to rip himself away from this seat. Of this car in order to pull the lever on the hood. And you guys, you know he doesn't do it because then the car, God, why am I laughing about this? The car falls
Because
on
it's
his girlfriend's face,
preposterous, Michelle.
and now her face is just like roomed away. The one guy had a ring through his face, and now that face has gone roomed away. Now fucking Evan's flying towards his friend who's stuck to a wall in this really fast car, and now he's flying out of the car. This is like this. What? What are you doing, Detective Hoffman? He's
This
like,
is this
John,
is for sure.
John took the reins off.
This is for sure the movie where by the end of it I was just laughing out loud in my room at just how utterly
Yeah,
absurd
I
this
love
entire
it.
thing has
It's
become.
And then we very briefly, I had posted about this on our Facebook because I was laughing so hard I had to pause. love this movie. I'd only seen it once. I thought I had seen it many times. I apparently only saw it the one time in the theater because I would have remembered more of these. The fucking lawnmower trap. It's only showing for 5 seconds while they are at a jigsaw victim support group because this happens so frequently that the people who do survive these traps, of which we only know two people at this support group, there are more out there that we haven't seen, but we will get to see in Saw 14 and 15 when we learn about John Kramer's teenage years and what he did to cause brain cancer. He was doing something back then that just evolved over time, and it was all his own fault. We learn how he met Jill Tuck. It's gonna be great in Saw 14 and 15. But the fucking lawnmower trap, this woman was hanging from like a sparky rod against the guy who I think she said was abusing her. It doesn't matter. I don't fucking care why they're there. What I do care about is that they're both hanging from rods and one of them has to let go and fall into at least 15 lawnmowers just propped with their blades facing upwards. There might be more. What happened before this? How are they in this predicament now? Did they wake up and like how were they hanging on before? Like how did they find all of these lawnmowers and prop them up this way? How did they start them all at the same time or did they start them one at a time? And I this is where the plot falls apart for me in this series. Everything up to this completely believable. Detective
I guess that's
Hoffman
one way of
putting
looking at
together
things. Sure.
putting together the lawnmower trap. That's too
That's the
far.
bridge too far for you. That was
Yeah.
the one.
Do you think you could survive the
No,
lawnmower trap?
I couldn't survive any of these, Michelle. How many times am I gonna have to say it?
Oh my god.
Oh,
Oh, I
several
was
more,
going
I'm
to tell you
sure.
the one I think you could survive is the one where you're put in a cage and then Jigsaw apologizes to you for that and gives you the option to kill an insurance salesman. When you
But
think
what
maybe
happens in that trap if you don't kill the guy? Do you die then?
everybody lives. No, just everybody lives.
If you just
That's
don't, all you
it.
have to do is just not kill a person, and then everybody else lives.
You can also kill him and you're fine. Yeah, nothing happens to you.
I just
That's
get
why
to
Jigsaw
decide
gets on
whether
the
this
video and
dude dies or
apologizes.
not.
Yep,
Why?
and you're just stuck in a
No,
cage for an
man.
hour.
Why? Okay, so remind me: did he kill the dude or did he not kill the dude?
She didn't kill the dude. The son went fuck that, and he killed the
And then
dude.
did they still all go away? Did they all get away scot free, no
We
harm?
never hear from them again. I have no idea what happened to this
Yeah.
mission.
See, you can't trust this motherfucker.
That's true. Hoffman probably did like let them starve to death after, but he was like, "Man, that was metal as fuck." Okay, now we get into the second
Also, frankly,
most
I would
brutal.
probably find a way to fuck that trap up.
You would fuck that trap. Fascinating.
Fuck that
Okay,
trap up,
now we are.
Michelle.
Now we are at Bobby's trial. This fucking
Don't go
movie.
taking words out
Bobby
of my mouth.
lied. Bobby was not in a jigsaw trap. He said he
God damn it,
was, but
Bobby.
he didn't. He's a best-selling author, and he runs into John Kramer at a book signing, and John Kramer is trying to look like a millennial. It's like
Oh, it's
begging
bad.
him for the
Oh, it's
back.
so bad.
It's a backward. Yeah, I fucking love this movie. Okay, and he's like, "Don't worry, we've met," because he's jigs. Okay, so Bobby,
Like,
he's
that
in these
sequence
traps.
made me really feel like they were trying so hard to make Jigsaw like a version of
Meme.
like Hannibal Lecter from
Oh my
not
god.
Silence of the Lambs specifically, but from like Hannibal and Red Dragon. Like they put him in that wig and they're trying to make him clever, and he's not like there's a lot of this franchise that like it's obviously really violent and it gets put in with horror, but as we said it previously, there is a lot of this franchise that is really just crime thriller. It's very much
Yeah,
just a serial killer thing, except it's like the Rube Goldberg serial killer device.
the real crime is what they did to Jigsaw in that outfit because he got memed so hard.
Yeah, they did.
It is hello, fellow
Didn't they give
children.
him like a weird
Okay, so
wig
Bobby,
too?
I know. Bobby is now put in his own game, Bobby's
Can
trial.
you
And the first
fly,
one,
Bobby?
oh man, this one's so fucked up. Nina is his publicist, and Nina tells lies. So, in order for Nina to speak no
God damn
evil,
it, Nina.
she is put in the silent circle. And now she has a string coming out of her mouth that has a fish hook at the
Nope.
end with a key,
Nope.
and he has 60 seconds to pull this fish hook out of her, and she can't yell because the metal post will get closer and impale her.
Nope.
I couldn't do either
Nope.
part of this. I couldn't.
No, I mean,
There's no fucking way.
well, I'll tell you exactly how that's going to end is he's going to try to pull that fucking hook out of my throat, and I'm going to scream and be impaled. That's literally how that's.
I'm
I'm
going to
probably going to scream before he ever even tries to pull the hook out.
I'm just going to swallow really hard until I have completely swallowed the string so he doesn't have an option. And then I'm just going to wait patiently.
You think
To be
Jigsaw's going to
murdered.
let you get away with that, Michelle?
Yeah, I'm going to die. I'm just accepting my death.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Like, he doesn't have. What's he going to do? Come, like, put metal posts in my neck? I'm waiting for that to happen anyway.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Like, what's the worst he's going to do? There's already a fish hook
I gotcha.
attached to a key in my stomach. That's the second hardest thing for me watching this series. I can do it because fuck Nina. I don't even know her, but I know we would not be friends. But like the Silent Circle and that fucking name, I'm telling you, I don't know if these names are canon, but I hope so because the Silent Circle, that's intense. Ooh, no fucking way. Then my next one, the impalement wheel. Susan is the lawyer, and Susan sees no evil. So now she is gonna have pointy things put into her eyes and her mouth, which like props on him getting that perfectly, so that it was perfectly lined up with her eyes. The mathematics that he went through designing these traps, like Hoffman's got some problems, but like he was really good at math. Good job.
Too good, you might
There's
say.
no trap there. Too good. So Susan, all Bobby has to do is lift some weights for at least 30 seconds to save her, because that's how far away these impalement thingies are. You know, math, you know what I'm talking about. 60 seconds, she would get impaled within 30 seconds. But if he made it to 5 seconds and then lifted them for 30 seconds, then it would be 30. You get it. You understand. So yeah, the impalement wheel, and Bobby can't lift weights. He skipped gym day every day. No gym day for Bobby. And now Susan gets impaled.
No,
I couldn't do that.
no.
I mean, the impalement part, I don't have a choice. Bobby lifting weights, no fucking way. I'm a
For
soft
the
lady.
86th time, I couldn't do any of this.
No fucking way.
In fact,
And then
I feel like Jigsaw would never even bother coming after me because he's not going to have any fun.
be like, this guy keeps trying
I'd
to
be like,
kill himself,
"Dude,
and I haven't even put him in a trap.
do we have to go through all this rigmarole? If you want me to die, could you just like shoot me in the head so I die very quickly? Can we just get this over with, please? Why you gotta torment
Your
me?
trap is stay alive. He just put you in like a soft room with a feeding tube.
Oh,
You don't have a choice. Listen to your own podcast for the rest
like
of your
that
life.
dude from Seven. Okay, anyway.
Great movie. And then we have the Hangman's Noose, which is such a fucking confusing trap. It happens to Kale, and Kale, his eyes, he can't see no evil. No, I've lost track of who's doing what to evil, but it's not happening in this trap. The Hangman's Noose. Kale can't see, and he's attached to a noose, and Bobby has to direct Kale how to walk across the beam so that they can get close enough to each other for Bobby to throw him a key, and then he throws him a key, and oh shit, Kale can't catch it because he can't see. Like, why is I was not shocked in the
Right, why are
least
you-
by the like. This is
Why are you throwing
there's
things to the blind guy?
yeah. This is like the least shocking ending to any of these. I'm like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you
It definitely feels in this entry like by this point everybody involved with the franchise knows that things have gotten kind of absurd. But I feel like they probably also knew at this point that this is finally when they were going to take a break for a while. with because they
So
did one of
glad.
these literally every single year at Halloween for 7
Mm-hmm.
consecutive years. But you can definitely tell by this point that they're just goofing off with a lot of it, and I appreciate that certainly.
You can tell immediately with the lawnmower trap.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
It's
god.
like
And
they're all
then
saying,
it
"Jesus Christ, I can't believe they brought us back to do a number 7 of these fucking things."
there's no way there's going to be an 8, 9 or
James
10, so
Wan
we
is
should
just
probably
like,
get this.
how the fuck am I making a fucking 7th Saw movie? What, this is madness. I mean, you gonna
I
give me a
can't leave
bunch of
my
money
house
to do
every
it?
time I go.
Absolutely. What? I mean, why not?
I can't leave my house every time I go out there. There's just more money.
Right? God,
It's frightening
here,
me.
could you make us another one of those movies? Yeah, I suppose.
No, no, go to therapy. Like the next one, after all of this, they're like, "Hey, you have to pull your teeth out." That's just.
No, I don't. No, I don't. What I have to do is sit there until I die.
Was there even a time limit to this? I don't think there was. They were just like, in order to get to her. I guess he does have to have her saved within the time limit, so that's kind of the time limit. But there's no like specific like pull your teeth out within 30 seconds. It's just like as you feel like doing it, I guess. Pull your fucking teeth out. And it goes on for so long. So long that we're cutting between him pulling his teeth out and the police closing in on him. And we're just constantly going back and forth. And then we're cutting to Hoffman just like hanging out reading a book. And he's like, no, go, not me. Go back to the guy pulling his teeth out. And then we do. And then we like go back to James Wan. And he's like, they keep giving me more money. And then we go back to more. It goes on for like half the movie.
It's,
It's so good.
it's just
It's
like
so good. Okay.
they call him up and be like, "Hey, James, had another banger opening weekend. You got another one of these in you?" And he's just like looking cross-eyed into nowhere in his room. He's just like,
Pull their teeth
"What the
out.
fuck is going?" I was, yeah, I guess. Let's
Oh
do
my
it
god, it's
again.
so good. And then I'm so glad that okay, technically this is not the ending of the movie. This is the ending of our trap list. But this is what we're ending on for the pages and pages of notes that I had, and that is the brazen bull.
Oh God,
It's-
it's very
this
biblical.
entire time Bobby's wife Joyce has been tied up in a separate area, and she does not know that Bobby is a liar. I don't know if Hoffman knows that Bobby's wife does not know the real truth. I don't. I think he knows that Joyce does
I
not
don't
know it.
think
That makes
Hoffman
this more fucked up.
cares.
I don't think he can, but I do think he's like she doesn't even
I don't think
know.
Hoffman
Oh man,
cares
fuck
because
this
at this
bitch.
point it's very clear that fucking James Wan doesn't even care. He's just like,
I
what
cared a
kind of
lot.
preposterous bullshit can I get them to give me millions of dollars to do on
Oh
film?
my god, I will. I'll give him more money for it. So he gets to his wife and then Jigsaw's like, "Oh man, here's a trap. This is going to be really easy for you cuz you've done it before, huh?" And then he tells him that he has to put hooks into his pectorals and lift himself up and attach two cords because that's what he had done last time and he's like, "As you know, the pectoral muscles can support your entire body weight, huh? Didn't you know that? You should because you've done this before." And then I fucking love that he does it and he's wrong and his pectoral muscle, like the thing
Just
that he
rips
came up
right
with,
out.
if it had worked, I'd been like, oh shit, wow, way to go. But no, the fact that he lied about something he couldn't have even been right
Oh
about,
my
like,
god.
and then he's not the one who suffers. His poor wife, Joyce, who did nothing.
Hmm.
She had no idea. She
Oh, she
thought
did
she was,
something,
there
Michelle.
was,
She existed. Her toxic trait was
she,
existing.
Bobby's wife, Joyce, then gets cooked alive in a bowl. And I thought there's no fucking way you're going to cook this lady. There's going to be another twist and something
Nope.
bad's going to happen to Bobby. No, he's watching his wife just get cooked. And then Jill Tuck gets reverse bear trapped and she has a tongue now and now Carrie Elway is mad and now he's gonna kill Hoffman and that's the end of the entire fucking Saw franchise until they made three more.
Oh my god. Michelle, do you understand at least a little bit now about why I say is there's just so goddamn much of it that it I really do. First of all, what I want to say is at the beginning of this episode, I gave the overall arc of these films a 2 out of 5. I do want to bump that up to a 3 because as I was sitting here, like I said, there are things about the structuring. God damn it, dog, calm down. There are things about the structuring of this and the writing and they really do a good job of not recycling traps and coming up with new ideas. I just having had the opportunity to sit down and talk about it for a while, I definitely appreciate the craft of this a bit more. So I'm going to bump that from a 2 to a 3 for the overall 7 movie arc, with the caveat that the first one is still a 4 skull movie.
Well, on average, they get 5 skulls for me, which does mean that this is our first 35 skull
People who just
episode.
recently joined us are going to be like, Jesus, does this fucking guy change his scores all the time? Yes, because the scores don't matter, guys. Have you figured that out?
It gives me such anxiety.
The scores are fucking meaningless. It's all a gimmick.
Oh, my scores, on the other hand,
Michelle's
are,
score. Yes, I want to be clear about that.
Michelle's
scores are thought out and put some consideration into. JD's scores are more like, oh, how do I feel about this movie right now in this moment, depending on whether or not I took my medication and how long ago that was. When was the last time you ate, JD? What's your blood sugar looking like right now? You can't read anything into my scores.
JD.
Yeah.
I just made the mistake of counting how many pages of notes I wrote.
How many did you write?
Frenzied hour. 8. Using size 11 Calibri font. That was my frenzy.
Jesus. Single space?
This is what you guys got. Single space.
Jesus Christ. And you thought I had gone on too long with just reading the little timeline bits at the beginning of this.
No, I just thought that you were making the wrong point because it did not seem absurd to me. You could have told me his whole life story and be like, yeah, he was an old guy when Saul.
No, yeah, and you're absolutely right. Like I said, they do an impressive job of maintaining the threads of it over the course of it. It's just I feel like two things, especially after being able to have this chat with you. Two things. I feel like if this was a 3-movie franchise and not a 7-movie franchise, overall, I would be able to appreciate it a lot more. Because, again, at 7 movies, it just becomes so much that it's just more than I need at that point. Also, I feel like I probably would have had a better experience with these movies. I didn't see a single one of these theatrically, of course, because I just saw them all except the first one recently. I feel like I probably would have enjoyed these films a bit more if I had been able to see them as a collective experience in a theater, or even just watching them on video with a few friends rather than just sitting at home and watching them by myself.
Oh, you don't want to just hang out and watch Saw 3 through 7 and then Spiral by yourself on a random Thursday?
I'm not saying I didn't want to do it. I watch plenty of movies by myself all the time. I feel like a big part of my appreciation of the Paranormal Activity franchise is because a friend of mine and I were really into it together, and we made it a point every year to go see those movies together, and we saw them in crowded theaters. And just being able to, there are certain types of horror movies that are just better in that environment. And I think I probably would have gotten into this a lot more if I had been able to experience them in that scenario.
Saw 5 in the theaters was a bad experience because I did not realize until the end that Strom and Hoffman were 2 different people. So until they were in the same room together, I was like, wait, these guys are they're 2 different detectives? So that was very confusing.
And like even to keep it on a James Wan note, like I saw Malignant at home by myself. I saw Megan in a theater full of people, and it's no surprise to me that Malignant didn't really work for me and I didn't get into it, and Megan is one of my favorite fucking movies of the year. I've watched it 3 times already. I feel like that I'm getting to a point where I feel like James Wan movies should almost only be experienced in a theater, at least for the first time. You should always see them for the first time with a crowd.
I stand by Malignant being a great fucking
Right,
movie.
and like I said, I feel like had I seen that in a theater with an audience, my opinion of it would be completely different. In the same way that had I just seen Megan at home by myself, I think my opinion of it would be completely different.
I saw Malignant by myself, and I stand by it being a great
Well,
fucking
some
movie.
of us get different things out of things different ways, Michelle.
Like Jigsaw.
Hey,
He got a lot of different things out of people, including keys. A lot of keys in bodies.
yeah, a lot of blood, a lot of blood,
A lot of blood.
lot of
so much viscera.
yeah, and a goodly amount of rotten pork vomit.
Oh.
Are you guys still with us after 2.5 hours of Saw discussion? It probably would have been an hour 45 if I could keep my dumb trap shut. Are they still with us, Michelle, do you think?
I'm barely with.
I checked out fucking 45 minutes ago. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm kidding.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
This is our first episode of November, so they're not all going to be
right.
like this.
This was
its own.
This was a little experiment. It will be fun to see how many of you did stick. But yeah, we're absolutely not going to drop fucking 2.5 hours on you on any kind of regular basis. Michelle might,
but they won't be together.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just gonna ramble.
Right. Luckily for all of you, I am the only one of us that watched all those Hellraiser movies. Michelle didn't also do that, so we're definitely not gonna.
I would like to hear your thoughts on Hellraiser in the form of a ghoul.
Let me. Well, I could definitely do that, but I can also give you just a quick summary here of my thoughts on it. I'm still not the biggest fan of the franchise. I understand what they were doing in the first three, and I think there's an interesting cohesive story through those first three. After that, the whole thing more or less falls apart for me. I thought number 4 was kind of silly, and I think there are two of them that I actually really liked, and I don't remember what their subtitles are, but number 6 and number 10 are especially examples of movies that I thought if they hadn't fucking shoehorned all this little bits of Hellraiser shit into this and had just left these alone, they would have been pretty solid movies on their own. I also, of course, though, have to wonder is if they hadn't shoehorned all that Hellraiser stuff into them, would these movies ever have been made in the first place? But that's kind of my general thoughts, and I will take some time to write some things up. Keep your eyes on the Ghoul blog at WeWatchShudder.com. I'm not sure how long it'll take me to get to it because I got the executive dysfunction. But yeah, keep your eyes out for that.
I would have liked the Hellraiser film.
Gouge your eyes out for that.
Dear God. That scared me. I'm so tired. I jumped so much. I was like, fuck Amanda, pig mask. Okay.
Run that shit back, bitch. I'm stylish.
Up.
Clock tuck, black t-shirt, Billie Eilish. You know that song, Michelle?
You also have been listening to Sophie all morning because I have. I keep saying Sophie Turner.
That's the chick from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Sophie Hunter.
I don't know who
that
is.
Listening to Sophie Hunter all fucking day. That's that song.
No, it's not.
Oh, sorry. No. Hang on. Sorry. She does her own ad lib verse to it that has completely replaced the original for me.
Oh.
And there is no version that is not Sophie Hunter version.
This is Armani White is who did the original version.
I know. Yeah, Sophie Hunter does a
black
freestyle
t-shirt,
over it,
Billie
and it's
Eilish.
way better.
Run that shit back, bitch.
So I don't
I'm
even
stylish.
think that song without her. Anyway, okay. I think I have said everything that I could possibly say. I'm so glad that we decided to just stick to the originals.
Oh, God, this would be a nightmare if we had to go through 3 more of these. Are you?
I
Jesus.
have intense feelings about Spiral.
I feel like there's a slight possibility that we just destroyed all the progress that we made throughout the month of October with one fell swoop on this episode. But we're going to find out. We're all going to find out together. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night.
We Watch Shudder is a production of Rat Factory Media, your home for all of today's Rat Factoryist podcasts. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests of We Watch Shudder are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Rat Factory Media. But wait, aren't Rat Factory Media and We Watch Shudder the same people? Shut your cake hole, Charlie. Nobody asked you. We Watch Shudder is available free on all major podcast platforms, and the easiest way to support We Watch Shudder is also free. Just leave a rating and review on your platform of choice. Merge your consciousness with ours on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We're at We Watch Shudder on all those social media platforms. Or find us the old-fashioned way, on the web at WeWatchShudder.com or by email at mail@WeWatchShudder.com. Heck, you can even leave us a voicemail at 701-566-9510. No, seriously, 701-566-9510. Try it if you dare.